fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rhythm, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top here!
Oh my god! Oh. Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Welcome back everybody to the 2020 Virtual Bathurst 12 Hour here on the SimSpeed TV network. Lachlan Mansell behind the microphone as we get set for the final 3 hours of action from Mount Panorama. When we left you at 11 o'clock this morning, it had been a drama-filled opening stanza of the race with 6 safety car periods. The news from here at Bathurst is that we've had a further 10 safety car interventions since then to take us up to a total of 16 safety car interruptions. We've also had a few high-profile retirements, but the good news is there's still plenty of cars on the late lap, 16 to be precise, and some high-quality drivers and teams that are set to battle for glory in this final quarter of the race. The margin between first and second is just under 2 seconds between the number 69 United Sim Sports machine and the number 43 Logitech G Alta C Sports car. And as we welcome everybody back to the coverage, it's great to have alongside me for the close of the race, Race Garden joining me in commentary. Race endurance racing at Mount Panorama never fails to deliver.
Yeah, never fails indeed, and never fails to get the heart rate up, as we just saw Forza El Nabi cut across the front of the AHR Endurance Audi. Here's an incident that happened just before we went live. The Fusion Sim Racing BMW trying to make their way past one of the Ferraris to get a lap back. They made contact on the entry to the chase. The Ferrari got spun into the barrier, ricocheted back off the wall, and sent Chris Pellet tumbling across the gravel trap. So the Fusion Sim Racing car already having a very tough day, and they got plenty more damage to repair from that. May very well spell the end of their campaign, as well as the Ferrari. But we've entered the final 3 hours of the event now, and leaders encountering a bit of traffic there as we check in with the other Altus Esports machine, the 83. Remember yesterday, this car missed out on a run for pole position when Cooper Webster invalidated his single lap in the shootout. So these guys have had a very tough job trying to work their way back up, and they've had their fair share of dramas as well, as you can see from that car, a fair few dings.
Yeah, a fair bit of damage early on, and they used up both of their fast repairs quite early in the race. All of the teams were granted 2 fast repairs to be using over the course of the journey. It's a 12-hour race, so you don't want to be using those up too early on if you can avoid it, but they are still on the lead lap though. Albert currently at the wheel of that car, and I think we can expect Cooper Webster to be jumping back on board for the last couple of hours of the race. Let's have a look at some of the high-profile cars that have retired from the race, and the number 209 Zuva Racing entry, Thomas Hinds. It was a contender early on, but unfortunately sustained some terminal damage and was a retirement. Also, the number 21 R1 Sim Sports machine. It was another car that was in the thick of the action earlier on. John Peaksnick, Reese Gasoul. They were a couple of the drivers who were inside the lead pack early on, and ultimately Louis Paulo Gallen, though, was a retirement in that car as well. We've seen the Synergy Sim Racing team has had an absolute shocker. All 3 of their cars involved in incidents, and the most recent retirement, which actually caused our most recent safety car intervention, the number 996 Trick Esports machine of Alexander Bird, Ross Rizzo and James Glasspool, ending up in the wall on top of Mount Panorama again after a tangle with the backmarker while that car was running in second position. Unfortunately, their day is done as well. But we'll run you through the order just to give you a bit of an idea of how things stand at the moment. As mentioned, it's the number 69 United Sim Sports entry of Forza El Nabi that leads the race. Andrew Carl is second at the moment, ahead of Cooper Murray in the last-minute racing entry that he is sharing with a couple of fellow Real World Racing drivers in Cody Bircher and Brody Kostecki. We've got Braden Nash in 4th position, And for the best of the Evolution Racing team, entries in position number 5 at this stage. Adam Briggs, it's been a strong run so far for the DPR team. They've got 2 cars in the top 10. Briggs is in 6th. John Derrick in the team. Schnitzel BMW in 7th. Back then to Jason Vance, John Merritt, Daniel Misdale rounding out the top 10. At this stage, we anticipate that the bulk of the field will have 3 pit stops left to go to make it to the finish of this motor race.
And that is a driver change for the number 83, Sam Blacklock, taking back over from Bo Albert. Blacklock completed one heck of a stint earlier on. He drove 4 or 5 stints in a row before Bo Albert took the car back over, but it's been handed back to Sam Blacklock now as we check in with our lead battle. A bit of traffic in the form of the Torque Inc. Lamborghini for our race leader. Mitchell McLeod currently at the wheel of the number 82, and Forzan El Nabi trying to have a look at Hell Corner, but this is bringing the number 83 right back into it. And these cars have been inseparable. They've never been more than a second apart since we went back live. And it looks like this is going to be the move then for the race leader, but life might be made difficult for the Altus car. They're coming up to the top of the mountain where there is no space, and traffic's going to be very hard to negotiate here, but makes his way through. He's got another Lamborghini to deal with, though, coming up to the cutting. That is Connor Brown, Real Bad Racing, number 8 car, but looks like everyone's gotten through that cleanly, so the lead battle continues.
We were originally going to have a GT4 class in the virtual Bathurst 12 hour, but there weren't enough entries in GT4, so the decision was made to make it a GT3 only race. But even despite that, traffic has still been a big factor and a big talking point today just because of the disparity in lap speed between the cars. You've got a wide variation in driver abilities across the field. We've seen a number of incidents today with faster cars getting tangled up with slower cars. But what's happening here, Race, such as the red-hot pace that our 2 lead cars are recording at the moment, they're pulling well clear of the rest of the field. They're now 8 seconds ahead of third place Cooper Murray, still only 7/10 of a second separating Forzan El Nabi from Andrew Carl at the moment. So this is a cracking battle between the United Sim Sports car and the first of the Olsys eSports cars. I have to say that I still think the United Sim Sports car is going to be the one to beat today. They've had a bit of adversity in this race. Early on, we saw that they were penalised when Jackson Suzlin Harlow turned a backmarker around at Reed Park on the top of the mountain. They copped a drive-through penalty for that one. And also Jared Philsell ended up down in the gravel trap at the chase at one stage after a bit of an incident with Bo Albert. But the thing that's impressed me has been their ability to recover from those setbacks. They've always found a way of fighting back to the front of the field. And now as we approach the business end of the motor race, they're in a good position and they've got a very, very good balance of driving talent. A lot of the other combinations in the field, they have one driver who might be noticeably stronger or weaker than the others, whereas this leading car, all 3 of the drivers are capable of punching out the lap times that they need to keep themselves at the front of the field, and that's now starting to pay dividends for them.
It is indeed, and I reckon if you were to choose any lineup on raw pace alone, you'd probably go for the United car. I think they have one of the most consistently good driver lineups in the field, so Andrew Carl has really got his hands full here. It doesn't matter who he goes up against, they're going to provide the exact same challenge. Just trying to keep it nice and smooth across the top of the mountain. The gap extending just a little bit there, but a little bit more traffic coming up for the leader, Daniel Willits, and the DT Racing BMW running down in 35th position. They're going to be passing him on Conrod Straight, so that is not going to be too much of a problem for these guys. Oh, Forzan El Nabi almost going for the inside move at Forest Elbow, but doing the smart thing and waiting for the straight. Willits just going to lift off here and let our leaders go. And that last-minute racing, BMW has lost a further few tenths on these 2 guys. Cooper Murray has had quite the task negotiating traffic as he has. And remember, the last-minute racing car was on the back foot from yesterday, Brody Kostecki accidentally registering for the shootout session in the wrong car. He had to complete his lap in a Mercedes, which they didn't have a setup for, and they weren't able to practice him. There is the Fishy Motorsport 818. A driver change for those guys. That's going to be Jamie Dyke getting into the car. And we check back on the Altus number 43, looking to make up another position here. The XCM number 100 with Murray Walpole at the wheel, having Sam Blacklock right behind him. That's going to be scary in the mirrors, especially considering the striking livery that these Altus BMWs have. Brief look there from Blacklock, but he's going to have to wait a bit longer to make this move.
And coming into the pits as well, out of third position, is Cooper Murray, and Adam Briggs has brought the number 72 simrigs.com DPR Ferrari into the pits as well. So we are now in the window where teams will be thinking about making what will be their third last pit stop of the race. Forza El Nabi, our race leader's now been on the track for coming up to 31 laps, so that car will be just about out of fuel as well. What we're seeing is that teams are not always running right to the end of the fuel load. Sometimes they're having to stop a bit earlier, and that's to do with driver time. They'll be doing the calculations, they'll be working backwards from the end of the race, because what they want is they want to make sure that they've got their fastest driver on board for the final stint. But you have to remember that no driver is allowed to do more than 65 laps continuously, and they're not allowed to do any more than 40% of the total race distance in the case of the three-driver team. So there will be a little bit of juggling of strategies to make sure that the teams can have their fastest driver on board at the end, but they're also not going to be in danger of breaching any of those regulations. Here's the battle for the lead at the moment, and in fact there's going to be a bit of lapse traffic. That's Sam Blacklock, who recently came into the pits, just being lapsed by our race leaders, Forza El Nabi and Andrew Carl. And Sam Blacklock will get back onto the lead lap when both of these cars come in it very shortly to take their pit stop. And El Nabi's going to stay out for another lap, so he's getting sensational fuel range out of that car. This is 31 laps completed now by our race leader, Forza El Nabi, in this stint.
Yeah, very good job there. And got to be careful of Andrew Carl behind Murray Walpole. This is the two battles that we were looking at coming together, actually. Walpole and Blacklock now going to run side by side down the mountain straight. And this is something that Andrew Carl wouldn't be too happy about. It's a little bit of an extra delay in his battle with Forza El Nabi, but getting past them in Griffins, that's going to keep the two battles going. Murray Walpole now with Sam Blacklock right on his bumper. Remember that Astro Gaming Altus Esports number 83 looking to try and break back into the top 10, currently sitting in 12th.
One of the other things, we talked about it during this morning's coverage as well, as tyre strategy. We've seen a lot of teams have been double stinting tyres today because it does add about an extra 25 seconds to your pit stop if you take a fresh set of tyres. Now we're getting towards the end of the race. The teams have got a bit of a decision on their hands. Do they try and double stint a set of tyres at the end of the race and give themselves as short as possible a final pit stop? Or do you take a fresh set of tyres, have a longer pit stop, but then have a better package to fight with in the final sprint to the checkered flag? That's going to be the decision that everybody's going to have to make.
Indeed, and a question for you, Lockie. Has anyone decided to go for a triple stint on the tyres so far? I think that'd be difficult to pull off.
Not that I'm aware of. I was actually having a chat to Brenton O'Brien, the team manager at Evolution Racing, earlier on, and he said that with the track temperatures as they are, there's no way that you would try and triple stint a set of tyres because your pace would just fall off the cliff in the third stint. So I think two stints is the most that we've been seeing anyone doing on a set of tyres. As Cooper Murray, this is a change in position up the inside of Adam Briggs. That is sixth position there for Cooper Murray, who, just having a look here, yeah, he would have taken tyres at his last pit stop because he was stationary for a minute and 10 seconds, whereas Adam Briggs, fuel only for that car. So that's a graphic demonstration there of the benefit of fresh tyres. Cooper Murray able to slice his way past that DPR Ferrari with ease, and in comes Forza El Nabi. Good stint for the United Sim Sports driver. 32 laps completed by our race leader, and he is in for what will be that car's third and last pit stop of the race.
Indeed, promotes the number 43 Altus car into the lead, and remains to be seen just how long Andrew Carl will last. We'd expect him to come in the next couple of laps himself. It looks like Forza El Nabi is staying in that number 69 United car, going for another stint there. And looking back through the laps of that car, well, Forzan completing a full stint already, and that car is out of the pits. It's going to rejoin in what looks like position number 5. So got a bit more to fight for. The fourth place car now is John Merritt in the TM Racing Ferrari, who we've seen has been a contender there for the top 5 after starting down in 19th place. That's really been a great fight back from the number 99.
It has, actually. They've been one of the impressive performers right throughout the race. Like you say, qualified a bit further down the field in that car. But all 3 drivers, John Merritt, Luke Turner, and also Glenn Seho-Riddell, they've been solid, as has Dennis Gatterick, who was the driver who was on board that car at the start of the race. In fact, Dennis Gatterick, since the opening stint, he's not been in that car at all. So the other 3 drivers... since lap number 33, in fact, it's been the other 3 drivers who've been sharing the driving duties. So Dennis Gatterick will have to get back into that car, presumably, for the final stint. Otherwise, he will not achieve his mandatory minimum number of laps in that car. So he's had pretty much the day off to go and do some housework or go out for a walk or whatever. And that means he'll be nice and fresh when he gets back into the car for the end of the race. Interestingly enough there as well, race with no tyres for Forza El Nabi. It was quite a short pit stop, so fuel only for the number 69 car. I would suspect that what they'll do is they'll change tyres at their next stop, which means they'll be doing the last 2 stints on a set of tyres.
All right, so they will have tyres that have taken a little bit out of them in the final stint, but the pace that they've had so far, I think they'll be able to pull that off. Remains to be seen what the Altus car is going to do. They're still lapping around the top of the mountain. Here is Reg James letting some cars through. That is the last-minute racing BMW that you see there with Cooper Murray at the wheel, making his way through traffic and going for the dive at the chase on Timothy Febben in the Mach 1 Esports white Ferrari. Fairly clean move done there, and with those fresh tyres on that car, I reckon last-minute racing, we can expect them to maybe go for the double stint now and have a completely fresh set of tyres in the final stint of the race. So keep an eye out for them. That increased pit stop time in the final stop might put them off sync, but we know what they can do.
And the other thing too with that team is the fact that Cooper Murray is doing a double stint now would indicate that they're probably going to put Brodie Kostecki in that car for the finish, because the car's other driver, Cody Bircher, did a couple of stints earlier on in the day, and I think he would have achieved his minimum number of laps. And in terms of lap times, Cody Bircher was not quite as quick as either Cooper Murray or Brodie Kostecki. So I think they wanted to try and get Cody Bircher's driving time out of the way and save up their really, really fast drivers for the final stint of the checkered flag. And it is a balancing act, because you obviously want your fast drivers to do the maximum time that they can in the car, but as we know in sim racing race, it's the concentration and it's the fatigue factor as well. You need to make sure that drivers have an adequate break in between stints, and in fact there is a rule that after you've completed a stint, you must serve a minimum mandatory rest period of 25 laps out of the car before you return to it. So that's the other juggling act. We've got a car in the wall. Bradley Glenn, that's at the Dipper, I believe.
Yep.
Our race leader has just come in. Andrew Carl handing the Altus Esports machine over to Simone Marie Marcheno, and Bradley Glenn is going to have to do a very awkward 3 or 5 point turn to get moving. We've seen a few drivers have to do that over the course of this race. At least he's off the racing line, but it's a pretty precarious spot to try and turn around.
It is indeed, and it's just inching that car forwards into the right direction. It's very difficult having an accident at the dipper. You can see you don't have much time to react when other cars are coming down, and it looks to me like he has been granted a tow there by race control, or maybe he's gone and escaped off himself. I'm not quite sure. We're going to take a look at that on the replay thanks to modem simulation. So what happened down here? Reasonable down into the S's, but just a little bit wide there, and the rear end of the car got away from him on the direction change and nearly mounted the fence, actually flipped the car over. Well, stuck the landing though on all four wheels, but unfortunately facing in the wrong direction. That's what happened to them.
Yeah, normally you're not supposed to escape back to the pits. Normally that would be a safety car, if that was the situation. Not that car was really in contention anyway, but we stayed green for the time being. We're very much in the window now where a lot of pit stops are starting to take place. A couple of cars left to pit, so the number 13 Evolution Racing Team car of Ian Ford is just about to complete its 31st lap in this stint, ahead of John Derrick. Both those cars will be in very, very shortly, and that should elevate Forza El Nabi back to the lead of the race. In fact, Ian Ford comes in right now. So the critical thing here, Race, is that El Nabi did not take tyres. The Altus Esports team did take tyres. So Simone Maria Marchino has fresh tyres at his disposal. However, what was a deficit of less than a second between the United Sim Sports car and the Altus Esports car is now some 20 seconds difference between those two cars due to the extra pit stop times to change tyres on car number 43.
Yeah, that's how it all works out. One car takes tyres and the other does not. I mean, the Altus guys, if they push hard on this set, they would be able to make up the gap by the time the United car comes in for their final stop, but it's going to be all about the final stint. I mean, Altus, I think they're going to be thinking at the moment, we're going to have to drive a bit more conservatively and still have something in the tyres for the very end of that race. Hans Brunswick takes over the BMW Team Schnitzel car, which has had one of the best runs in the field, I have to say. They started from 25th position, and they're in contention for a top 5, maybe even a top 4 position there. So looking forward to seeing what they're going to make of these final 2 hours of the race. And Marchino, not facing much drama from traffic either. He can focus on getting those quick laps in.
And so Riley Preston, who has relieved Ian Ford behind the wheel with car number 13, has moved up to position number 3, again, as a result of not taking tyres during that car's pit stop. So we've got a bit of a variety of strategies playing out here inside the top 5. So just to give you a bit of a rundown, Forza El Nabi, race leader, no tyres. Second place car, Logitech G, Altus Esports, Simone Maria Marchino, did change tyres. Third place, Riley Preston, no tyres. Fourth place, Cooper Murray, yes, took tyres. Fifth place, Adam Briggs, no tyres. So a varied approach in strategy with how the top 5 teams are approaching the final 2.5 hours or thereabouts of this race.
Yeah, and if you go one position further down, you can actually see that NSR Esports and TM Racing have continued the pattern. It's tyres for the 119 and no tyres for the 99. So John Merritt rejoining there in position number 7. This is the next car back, Guy Leach in the Injectors Online Racing car. Since I loaded into the session, they haven't pitted again. But we should expect another stop for those guys pretty soon, and they'll be racing with the 83 Astro Gaming Altus Esports car, maybe the XCM number 100 as well. Got to be careful on the exit of Forest Elbow, especially this far into the race. Fatigue sets in, and the car picks up minor bits of damage from its adventures across the circuit. And you really have to be careful across the top of the mountain. It's one of those places that really encourages you to push hard, but those walls incredibly close at all times. One false move, fraction of a second too early or too late on the brakes, throttle or steering, it can completely ruin your race. As we see Ben Rothberg taking over the number 26 ERT entry. Down in P15, they're going to be lining up shortly for a battle with one of those XCM cars in the form of Martin Crisp.
They've had an up and down day today. In car number 26, Ben Rothberg, as you mentioned, they're currently in that car. They've also got Josh Thomas and Ben Smith and also Ethan Grigolt entered in that car. And they'll be working towards being able to get Ethan Grigolt back into that car to finish off the race, because he's not driven it since his opening couple of stints at the start. However, they are down in 15th position and they are a fair way behind our race-leading car. So they'll be needing some safety car interventions to try and make up that lost time so that Ethan Grigolt can sprint home at the end. In fact, they're going to battle here just to stay on the lead lap, because there's Forzen El Nabi and he's not that far behind, putting Ben Rothberg a lap down. So, yeah, Ben Rothberg's got a bit of a fight on his hands here just to stay on the lead lap.
Indeed he has, and with the lap time he just set, a 2:07.257, I think it might be a matter of time before El Nabi comes around a lap, and the 2:05.8 on the previous lap for Forzen El Nabi. That car still has a ton of pace in it, especially considering that they didn't take tyres in their last stop. I think Forzen extracting the optimum out of that BMW for the time being. Simone Maria Marchino, on the other hand, 7/10 faster on the last lap. Those fresh tyres working very nicely for the number 43.
And he is the fastest driver on the racetrack at the moment, 2 minutes 5.1. Lap time's not as quick as what we saw in the cool of the morning conditions, when we saw best lap times in the high 2:01s, and we saw a lot of cars lapping in the low 2:02 bracket as well, but still some decent pace being achieved by some of the cars that are out there at the moment. I'm going to put it out there, Reece. I know that it's a big call, but I think if you go down a lap at this stage of the race, it's pretty much game over, because at this late stage, to get back onto the lead lap and then have to try and fight your way through all of the traffic to get back to the front of the field, you're not going to have enough time. You go a lap down early in the race with safety cars and with pit strategy, you can recover it, you can get back onto the lead lap and you can get yourself back into the hunt. But this late in the day, if you were to fall off the lead lap, I think it would just be a bridge too far to get back into contention.
I'd be inclined to agree, personally, but we've seen plenty of weird stuff happen in the past on SimSpeed broadcasts, as we see Matthew Norris bring the Hyperdrive BMW out of the pits in 24th. I think it would take a very well-timed safety car. You'd have to be right on your strategy, and you'd have to basically be in the right place at the right time to capitalize on the safety car, bringing the field together and getting your lap back. But it really is depending on chaos working out in your favor, and a race like this is inherently chaotic. Yes, there is some order to how you expect the strategy to go, but you've got human beings in every single one of these cars, and human beings make mistakes. Human beings can falter for a time and pull something amazing out of the bag at other times. It really introduces quite a chaotic energy into this race, as now we're seeing Ben Rothberg with the United car looming in his mirrors for that final spot on the lead lap. It's going to be hard to get past him on this area of the circuit, but considering the pace that El Nabi is continuing to churn out of that BMW, I reckon it'll be a case of passing in the next lap or so. And poor Ben Rothberg, if he gets lapped now, he's going to face a bit more difficulty in catching up to the XRC3 car of Martin Crisp, we just saw disappearing out of the bottom of the picture there. The blue, orange and yellow Ferrari is all there is the move. That's Ben Rothberg making his way past Andrew Goldman in the Gentleman's Sim Racing Club Callum Murray Racing entry. So for Forzen El Nabi, the draft is on, and Rothberg's just going to lift off, move over, let him go. A little bit of a setback there in the fight for an extra position for ERT, but that has sealed it. There are now 14 cars, on the lead lap right now.
Yeah, what Ben Rothberg would have loved would have been a safety car, but unfortunately it hasn't happened for him, and he's now down a lap. Oh, as we've got Andrew Ritchie in the wall. That's heading down into the S's. We've seen a few crashes in that part of the circuit today. And again, it's not a very easy place to turn the car around. He's going to try it. At least he's managed to get into that tarmac runoff area heading over the skyline.
It looks to me like Andrew Ritchie unfortunately did that to himself. The car got away from him coming down the hill. If you run a little bit wide of the left-hander where he's at the moment, the rear end of the car can just swing out and there's not much you can do to fix it. And the AutoServe Racing BMW, carrying sponsorship from Movember, was involved in that as well, unfortunately collecting Andrew Ritchie. There he is, just letting by the last-minute racing BMW, but you'll see in just a few moments how easy it is to lose a car coming down the hill.
So he's all out on his own at the moment, so I doubt that he's been involved in any incidents with anybody else, but as we discussed before, as you head over the crested skyline, you're trying to make the car both brake and turn at once, and that's exactly what's happened, but another car's been caught up in that one as well. That's Max Havett. So he came over the crest with absolutely nowhere to go because of Ritchie spinning in front of him. Here's what it looks like on board. So you can see the back end of Ritchie's car gets away as he flicks into the left-hander at the S's and bounces straight back into the path of Max Havett.
And unfortunately, there wasn't much Havett could have done there. With Ritchie splayed across the racetrack as he was, there was no room either side to get it done and get past. There's Paul Mansell bringing, I think that's formerly the Guy Leach car. Paul Mansell taking that one over, and they are out of the pits.
Yep, that's pretty much on schedule, that stop.
Oh, and he's going to come out right with the battle for position with the Evolution Racing Team number 26 and XRC3 right alongside. A bit of reduced momentum thanks to the pit exit coming onto Mountain Straight. This is a four-car battle now. Mansell ahead, and then there's Chris Rothberg and Jamie Dyke in the Fishy Motorsport 818, who we saw involved in that big incident with the Fusion Sim Racing BMW earlier.
Just shows you how hot the contests are as we start getting very deep into the race. So this is a battle outside the top 10, but they'll still be fighting very hard for track position.
Now the Injectors Online car, number 46 there, he's got the XRC car right on his bumper. They didn't take tyres in that last pit stop, so Paul Mansell has jumped right into this car with an already used set of tyres, and he's got three cars bearing down on him coming down the hill. You take a glance in that rear-facing camera that serves as the rearview mirror on the Ferrari 488. That's a sight that you want to see getting smaller in your mirrors.
Just having a look at the lap times, the car's a bit further towards the front of the field as well, Race, and there's definitely time in those fresh tyres. Simone Marie Marcheno's been consistently half to 3/4 of a second quicker than our leader, Forza El Nabi. The fastest driver on the circuit at the moment, though, is Cooper Murray in position 4. 2 minutes 4.9 was his lap time last time around, and he is bridging the gap to the race leaders as well.
He is indeed, as almost a coming together there. That is position done for Ben Rothberg. Martin Crisp tried round the outside of Paul Mansell into the chase, but didn't work out, and Rothberg was just able to slip through into 13th position.
So all these cars have now been lapped, so we've now only got 11 cars on the lead lap. The pace of Forza El Nabi at the front of the field, as well as the fact that he chose not to take tyres in that last pit stop and therefore had a shorter pit stop than a lot of other cars, has meant that he's been able to lap quite a few other drivers. So this relentless pace from El Nabi, it's actually putting more and more cars out of contention in terms of the overall context of this motor race. As up the inside goes Ben Rothberg and Griffin's Bend. There is the move for position 12.
Indeed it is, and Rothberg really taking advantage of those incidents. An extra couple of positions never goes astray, even if you are a lap down. What will Martin Crisp do then? He was unsuccessful in getting past Paul Mansell just a lap ago. What's he going to do this time? The view across the top of the mountain gets very claustrophobic when you're in the middle of a group like this, and you got to be careful not to imitate too much what the car in front is doing. You can get fixated on a target and get yourself into a spot of bother. It looks to me like Crisp is really taking advantage of those presumably fresh tyres on that machine. 1 minute 34 seconds in the pit lane, 1 minute 11 stop time, so there's definitely some fresh rubber on that XRC car.
Here's Cooper Murray, currently running in position number 4 in the last minute racing BMW that he is sharing with Cody Bircher and Brody Kostecki. 3 drivers, all with national level race victories to their credit. Cooper Murray, race victories for him in Porsche Carrera Cup. Cody Bircher, race victories in the Australian Formula 4 Championship, and Brody Kostecki, of course, race victories in at the Dunlop Super 2 Series. Will be stepping up full-time to the Virgin Australia, or it's not the Virgin Australia, it's now the Repco Supercars Championship, driving with the Erebus Motorsport team in season 2021.
Yeah, great stuff there for Brody Kostecki, and he's getting some. He's going to be getting some very good practice for the season opening Bathurst 500 in this 12-hour race. Mr. Murray, though, continuing to push here versus Riley Preston in the ERT Ferrari. And this is another battle of tyres versus no tyres. Remember when the ERT Ferrari came into the pits, no tyres for them, but the last pit stop for the last minute racing car, they have a fresher set on there. So Riley Preston, formerly raced in the iRacing Grand Prix World Championship Series for Evolution Racing Team, putting that experience to good use in the mid-engine Ferrari, but the pace of Cooper Murray, it seems, is insurmountable at the moment, especially considering the rubber situation.
Yeah, Cooper Murray continues to be the fastest driver on the racetrack. He was a second quicker than Riley Preston on the last lap. He was almost 2 seconds quicker than the race leader, Forsen El Nabi. So Cooper Murray, who came out of the pits about half a minute off the race lead, he's got the margin to Forsen El Nabi down to 23.2 seconds. And let's not forget that at the next round of pit stops, we expect that there will be some differences in tyre options. We expect that El Nabi will have to change tyres because he didn't do so last time around, whereas the likes of Marcheno and Murray have got the option to double stint their tyres in their next stint should they wish to do so. So what you'll see in the second to last stint of the race is quite possibly a reverse of what you're seeing right now in terms of who has fresh tyres and who doesn't.
Yes, indeed. My goodness. We're in for quite the finish here as the gap continues to drop between Preston and Murray. Cooper very deep on the brakes coming into the chase. Remember, these GT3 cars, they have access to certain driver aid electronics. They're allowed to use ABS and traction control. Of course, the further up you go in the field, the less likely a driver is to use them to their full extent. Still useful in a big braking zone like the chase, and getting the feeling this is going to be a move into Griffin's. The draft is there for Cooper Murray, but Preston's going to force him to go around the outside at Griffin's. And we've seen that turn is quite difficult, but it's a lapped car going to make things difficult there. Carl Zink in the 951, and that is the position changed. Cooper Murray just letting himself ahead of Riley Preston there. They wouldn't have wanted to go 3 wide into turn 2.
That was a very, very easy move in the end for Cooper Murray. It was made even easier by the fact that there was that lapped car on mounted straight, which meant that Riley Preston just had to momentarily breathe out of the throttle. So Cooper Murray lost virtually no time at all in making that passing manoeuvre, and that's good news for him because he can blaze on and continue to reduce the margin to the race leaders, Forza El Nabi and Simone Maria Marcheno, who are currently separated by 14.3 seconds, with Marcheno taking another 0.7 of a second out of El Nabi on the previous lap.
Yeah, Marcheno looking very quick at the moment, but he's got two Gentlemen Sim Racing Club cars up ahead of him here. Andrew Goldman and James Mooney, they both let him go there on the straight. Mooney lifts off and lets his teammate through as well. Mooney down in 29th position, 9 laps down on the lead, but the 144, 5 laps down on the lead. So a nice change between the two GSRC machines. Marcheno can have a little bit of clear track for the next couple of corners. The next car up from him is Chad Lewis there in the LL Racing machine. The car coming down into the pits, that was Andrew Goldman actually, who had just been let by his teammate, and that GSRC Callum Murray racing car is going to potentially go for a driver change. I'm not too sure. Yeah, it looks like he is jumping out of the car. And Parry Anastakis is going to take over from him in the 144. Here's Paul Mansell and Martin Crisp, meanwhile. Injectors Online and XRC still fighting on track.
So these two cars battling just off the lead lap. They've lost a bit of ground to Ben Rothberg in the last couple of laps. Both of those cars have had good solid races, good consistent performances. Haven't quite had the outright pace of the leaders in the back end of this race, but still sitting nicely inside the top 15.
Indeed they are, and Martin Crisp still pushing as hard as he can, running so close to the wall on the run up to McPhillamy Park. You don't want to get too close though, because we've seen what can happen when a car just gets it slightly wrong across the top of the mountain. Conrod Straight is going to be his best chance to try and get by. He can use those slightly fresher tyres, bit of a wider entry than Paul Mansell as well, and take advantage on the exit, get in the draft, and maybe draft up to his bumper by the time they get to the chase. But it looks like that gap might not decrease as quickly as I would have thought. But the battle continues, and those teams are going to be keeping each other very good company in the last 2 hours.
So a bit of an update for you on car number 83, which is the second of the Altus Esports entries. We are hearing that the last fast repair for that car didn't fully fix the damage, so the drivers of that car still having to manage a few handling imbalances, which is why the pace hasn't quite been there for that car in the last couple of stints. We are expecting that Cooper Webster, who was one of the standout performers in qualifying yesterday, will be back on board that car for the final stint. I mean, if there's still some residual damage, not quite sure that they're going to have the speed that they need to fight for victory.
Yeah, that car carrying a fair few battle scars still. And they're going to have to take extra care across the top of the mountain with no fast repairs left. The gap for the lead, meanwhile, is now under 14 seconds. Simone Maria Marcheno is going hell for leather in that number 43, setting a 2:05.372 on his last lap, and the gap was 13.8 seconds at the line. He's already brought it down a tenth from there out of the cutting. Looks to me like Forza El Nabi coming up on a little bit more traffic with Brett Barker and the AHR Endurance Ferrari. That's not going to slow him up too much. Nice early pass down Conrod Straight.
Key thing is when you're approaching backmarkers, particularly if you're in a section of the circuit where it's quite tight, like Forest Elbow, you really want to be making sure that they've seen you before you go diving up the inside, because if they haven't seen you and they turn in, that's when you can make contact. And we have seen a few incidents throughout this race with leading contenders getting tangled up with backmarkers. Good that we've had a bit of green flag running race. Not sure if you caught any of the early stages of the race that we broadcast between 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time this morning. Might have been a little bit too early for you over in Western Australia, but we had safety car after safety car. It was stop-start. There wasn't a lot of rhythm or flow getting into the race whatsoever, so it's been good that we've had a bit of extended green flag running and we've been able to see some of the different strengths and weaknesses in driver combinations and different strategies starting to play out.
Yes, indeed. It is a shame, though, that we've lost quite a few potential contenders for the race win. I mean, we mentioned the R1 Sim Sports car as Marchino makes his way through this battle between Crisp and Mansell. The R1 car, all three Synergy machines, I was really looking forward to seeing how they did, especially considering they got all three cars into the top 15 shootout. But, I mean, they just had a torrid day, two of the cars making contact and making their way out of the race. And of course, we can't forget about the Zuva 209 as well. That car would have been in contention for race victory. But we've still got a great lineup up at the front of this field, with El Nabi continuing to just hold station in the lead. The gap is now under 13 seconds. Marchino just chipping away at that gap gradually despite the traffic.
Yeah, so the key thing here is that both Marchino and Cooper Murray have pretty much got that gap down to a point where they're within a tyre change worth of time, if that makes sense. So if El Nabi changes tyres at his next stop, Marchino and Murray choose not to, then both Marchino and Murray should leapfrog ahead of the number 69 car.
Yeah, it should. We will wait with bated breath for that final pit stop. And the United Sim Sports car is now 15 laps into that stint, and we remember how long Forza El Nabi was able to extend that stint to 33 laps. They obviously got the fuel usage down pat in that car, so maybe them being able to go a little bit longer will help them as they go for the move. That's a bit tight into Griffins. Just making their way past the Team Hyperdrive 219. Dion Peters at the wheel of that car. Marchino, meanwhile, coming up on the ERT Ferrari with Ben Rothberg at the wheel in 12th, and the lights are flashing for him. There's Cooper Murray and Riley Preston, your top four, all covered by, say, about a third of a lap. And Adam Briggs is facing some pressure there from the Talking Lamborghini. Of course, it's not on the same lap. Aaron Russell having taken over from Mitchell McLeod and looking to make his mark here. Aaron Russell, of course, a former Supercars driver in the real world and still active in real-life motorsport. Doing very well to get that car back into the top 20.
Comment before jumping on board that car was that he felt more nervous about getting behind the wheel of that Lamborghini than he did about getting in his first stint in the Bathurst 1000. That shows you how seriously he's taking this race today.
Yeah, certainly does. He's right on it, is Aaron Russell, and keeping Adam Briggs quite honest. I'm just seeing the move being done down Conrod Straight for Marchino, making his way past Ben Rothberg on the run up to the chase. Not much of a hindrance there. We'll get the lap times when El Nabi crosses the line. Mansell still ahead of Crisp, and that battle is starting to get a bit overwrought, I think. A 2:06.77 from Forza El Nabi. Meanwhile, for Marchino, it's a 2:05.87. A great big chunk of time taken out of El Nabi on that lap, and I think traffic had something to do with it.
Cooper Murray, 2:04.6. He's got serious pace at the moment. Cooper Murray, he was 2.1 seconds quicker than our race leader, Forza El Navi. He's now only 17 seconds off the lead of the motor race. He was over a second quicker than Marchano as well. Cooper Murray is a man on a mission at the moment in that last-minute racing BMW.
That he is. And he's going to be coming up very shortly on this battle between Mansell and Crisp. Remains to be seen how he's going to navigate this, because those two Ferraris just not able to leave each other alone for the time being. Mansell ran a little bit wide through Quarry Corner, allows Crisp to catch back up, and he's going to get right on the bumper here across the top of the mountain. He was going to be blocked a little bit, so Crisp is going to have to put some faith into his car as well. Did I see Murray glance off the wall there just as the shot ticked over? That BMW is pushing incredibly hard, and it's going to catch up to the two Ferraris out of Forest Elbow, coming onto Conrod Straight. Get another view then of Cooper Murray making his way out of Metal Grate as the two Ferraris battle ahead. Down the hill, turns in, and how close did he get to the wall here? Across the curb, and oh yeah, it was a slight glancing blow, but I don't think it's going to affect his pace that much. He's already with Crisp and Mansell.
Yep, and should get past at least one of them down Conrod Straight, and he has. And probably try and make a move on Mansell heading into Murray's corner. That's actually been a spot where we've seen Cooper Murray appropriately make quite a few passing manoeuvres. He flashes the lights, he dives to the inside, and he's now managed to clear both of those back markers, and he's got some clear track to set off after El Navi and Marchano once again. 205.1 for Cooper Murray that time around. So even despite the glance of the wall, and even despite the fact that he had to negotiate a couple of Ferraris, still didn't lose too much in terms of pace. Cooper Murray. Marchano, though, the fastest driver that time around with a 204.9, as he gets the margin to the race leader down to just on 10 seconds.
These guys, meanwhile, are the final two cars on the lead lap. Hans Brunswick in the Team Schnitzel BMW, and Neil Pearson right behind him for Simrigs.com DPR. Oh, Pearson just caught the wall on the inside of Forest Elbow, so I think that might put paid to at least this section of this battle. Looking back through their lap times, Brunswick got into the car on lap 254. They're on lap 267 now. And for Neil Pearson, he got in on lap 249. So we should expect the DPR car to pit before the Team Schnitzel one does. But still managing to keep him honest here in this close battle. And I don't think they're in much danger of going a lap down anytime soon, because the United Sim Sports car coming up to the entry to the chase right now. Still quite the gap for these guys to fight it out amongst themselves.
Good job from these drivers to keep themselves on the lead lap so deep into the motor race. And good solid driving, really impressive performance from the Simrigs.com DPR racing team to have two cars inside the top 10. And in fact, the Adam Briggs, Andrew Dyson and Philip Worley car is currently in position number 5, having a typically consistent and solid outing.
Indeed they are, and the 73 will be hoping for more of the same in these last couple of hours, but a bit wide for Pearson on the run up to the cutting. There's quite a bit of marbles being laid down on the exits of these corners. So if you go a bit too deep into the cutting, that's what happens. Pearson still keeping within the gap. As long as he can stay within a second of Brunswick here, he'll still be able to pick up the draft.
Push hard over the top of the mountain to try and stay within slipstream range, and then focus on getting a good exit out of Forest Elbow for the run down Conrod Straight. And you're right, if you can pick up enough of a draft, enough of a slipstream, he's going to take it to the inside. I think he actually got his approach to Forest Elbow a bit wrong there, and it was pretty lucky that he didn't lose control of the car altogether. And you can see that that's actually cost him a bit of exit speed there coming out of Forest Elbow.
Yeah, so that's 2 problems in a row for Neil Pearson, 2 laps in a row coming out of Forest Elbow. So here's what happened on the run up to the corner. The entry to Forest Elbow, you've got to negotiate this right-hand kink, and as he lifts off and gets on the brakes, the rear end just breaks free, and he had to gather the thing up and just hope that it didn't hit the inside wall there.
Bit of a spooky moment, wasn't it? Again, it's a section of the circuit that can very easily catch you out if you're not careful. So 2:05.9 the lap time last time around for the United Sim Sports car that leads the motor race. And we go back to Marcheno in second, 2:04.6 for him that time around. So Marcheno more than a second quicker than El Nabi. Murray still lapping in the 2:04s as well with 2:04.7. So the tyres for El Nabi that are coming towards the end of what will be a double stint, I think starting to fall off the cliff because he's starting to bleed time to the cars behind.
Indeed he is. That's quite foreboding for El Nabi, as it's another 2:04 for Simone Maria Marcheno. It looked like about 1.3 seconds taken out of El Nabi on that lap, but they'll be driving with the idea of taking the fresh set of tyres in their final stop and making sure that they have all the rubber underneath them to mount a final challenge for the win versus this number 43. Marcheno's still lapping fantastically. He's kept the car out of the wall. He's kept the car going nicely. Just watching him versus a few other drivers in this field, I can see there's barely any mistakes from Marcheno. Just nice, smooth inputs the whole way around the mountain. He keeps it a good distance from the walls, rides the curbs, but doesn't abuse them. It's a pleasure to watch.
So Forza El Nabi, I think, needs to go as deep into this stint as he can so that when he comes in for his second and last pit stop, if he's going to double stint his final set of tyres, that the double stint doesn't have to be any longer than it needs to be. Marcheno and Murray, it's a little bit of a different situation for them though, because we expect that they will double stint their current set of tyres and they'll take a fresh set for what will be the final stint of the race. So they might elect to make the final stint a little bit longer and make their current stint a bit shorter. So it could be that we see a bit of variation in when these top 3 cars come in for their next round of pit stops.
It'll be interesting to see what that variation is going to be as we see a bit of traffic in the form of Matthew Norris just up ahead of Simone Maria Marcheno here. And Norris is going to lift off on the run up to Murray's and let him straight through. Another uninterrupted run here for Simone out of the final corner. What's the lap time going to be this time? Another 2:04 there, a 7:99. Compare that to, well, El Nabi is back into the 2:05s, 2:05.9, but that's still not enough to stymie the run that the number 43 has. But they're all working towards the end of the race here. It's thinking about just getting everything set up in place. Will you be in the right position? Can you nail your pit stop? With Mansell and Crisp continuing to battle here for 13th and 14th, just 2/10 between them now. Crisp in the draft of Mansell, but not going for any banzai moves at the moment. Remember, this Ferrari following the Injectors Online car is on fresher tyres, so if he's brave enough, he can put a move on Mansell and make it stick. But just seems that Mansell is doing everything he needs to do to make that Ferrari as wide as possible.
It's a really good battle. Just goes to show that there's always battles up and down the field, even though we're getting into the very late stages of the race and we've got a lot more separation between cars than we had earlier on. There's still cars battling for position. Good to see that the rate of incidents has decreased somewhat recently. We've managed to go pretty much the longest period that we have without any safety car interruptions. Will we get any more safety car interventions before the end of the race to bunch the field up and give us a grandstand finish? It seems to be something of a tradition at Mount Panorama, so you certainly wouldn't bet against it.
No, I'm not a betting man, but I would put money on there being another safety car before the end of this race. That said, I am quite impressed with the quality of driving that's gone on since we came back for this final 3 hours broadcast. Oh, having said that, I've just noticed there's a car stopped on the start-finish straight. It's Perry Anastakis in the number 44 Gentleman's Sim Racing Club car, and that's on the run-up to turn 1. How on earth did that happen?
Has he run out of fuel, perhaps? It's parked at a weird angle, so no, maybe there's some other issue with that
Looks
car.
to me like a hardware issue, potentially. Oh, yeah, it does look like a hardware issue. Anastakis, I think his throttle got stuck on the start-finish straight. You'll see as he comes around Murray's corner, he's going to veer to the left unexpectedly and clatter the pit wall. Wait for it. Here we go. Throttle stuck, and he just cannot get that thing slowed. And immediately on the brakes, that is a very bizarre incident there for Perry Anastakis. And he is still stopped out on the circuit at the moment. Safety car hasn't been called yet by race control, but we would expect that pretty soon. Well, it's funny, isn't it, Lockie? We were just talking about safety cars.
A few teams and drivers clearly think that there's probably going to be one, because we've seen pit stops from a number of competitors. The number 13 car, Riley Preston's come down pit lane. The Simrigs DPR number 72 machine is in the pits. So too, car number 119, the NSR Esports car, John Merritt, Sam Blacklock, a whole host of cars diving on into the pits. So clearly a lot of teams are anticipating that there is going to be a safety car, and it has now been called. So here we go, safety car intervention number 17. Right on 2 hours to go in the race, and right within the window for people to come down pit road for what will be their second and last pit stop. So our leading trio of contenders will all be in this time around as well.
Oh, I love this. The strategy resets, but they've still got to think about, oh, do we take tyres or don't we? Because if drivers decide to take a fresh set of tyres now, they'll obviously have to deal with the disadvantage of that. Well, the leaders are all into the pits, and the pit stop time begins. Riley Preston and Murray Walpole in 4th and 5th. They're going to be together quite nicely out on the track.
So the Evolution Racing Team car looks like it is taking tyres. So that's the second pit stop in a row that car is taking tyres. Car number 36, last minute racing. Driver change for that car. Brody Kostecki now behind the wheel. And Forza Nabi vacates car number 69 in favour of Jackson Suzlin Harlow. So driver changes happening in 2 out of our top 3 cars. Car number 43, though, Simone Marie Marchino is going to remain on board that car for the time being.
In the sister Altus car, though, Cooper Webster has taken over from Sam Blacklock. They are back out on track now. Cooper Webster getting in there for the first time since lap 133, so he's had a very good break. The leader, meanwhile, out, and whoa, it's a dead heat between the two cars on pit exit. My goodness, shows you just how close it was between those two cars. Pit stop times 58.7 for the United car. For this car we're riding on board with, it was 56 seconds, so a little bit less in the pit stop for those guys, but neither of them taking tyres, crucially.
No, I think
no,
they
actually,
both took tyres, yeah.
Yeah, I misread the numbers there. Both of them taking tyres, so I guess we can expect it to be a double stint to the end of the race for both of our leading cars.
Indeed, so all 3 of our leading cars have taken tyres, and so has the 4th placed Evolution Racing Team car of Riley Preston, as has the number 72 car of Philip Worley. So this has pretty much brought everybody's tyre strategies all back together again, which means that I don't think anybody will take tyres at the last pit stop. They're all working towards making that final pit stop as short as it can possibly be. For the likes of for Cooper Murray and Simone Marie Marchino, they probably would have preferred the race to have run green for a bit longer, because then they might have been able to get away with not taking tyres at that particular pit stop, and they might have been able to jump ahead of the United Sim Sports car. But just with that timing of that safety car and where it fell, it really forced everybody into having to change tyres during that pit stop.
It did, and with the driver change for the number 69, Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, back in that car, taken over from Forza El Narbi, we know how quick Jackson is. I think Marchino is going to have a very tough job keeping up with Harlow when the race goes green, because if there's anything we can say about the United car, it's that they know how to put the power down right away, and they might be able to get themselves a nice gap here with there being no traffic on this restart. Last couple of cars coming out of the pit lane, meanwhile, Scott Rankin and Jamie McKnight in the Fishy Motorsport 818. They've just exited the lane, and they'll be able to catch up to the back of the field here. Everyone just running at reduced pace. The safety car will likely stay out for another lap, at least, just to allow the field to reorder itself, for everyone to catch back up.
Unfortunately for our third place driver, Brody Kostecki, there's going to be quite a number of laps cars between him and the second place driver, Simone Marie Marchino. So just with the timing of that safety car and where it's come out, hasn't quite worked out for Brody Kostecki. He is going to have to round up some back markers if he wants to have a crack at our two race leaders.
Yeah, there's 4 cars in between him and the number 43. So Mr. Kostecki is going to have to pull out all the stops here, and the lapped cars are going to have to be cooperative on the restart, which is much easier said than done around a track like this, especially coming up Mountain Straight and towards Griffins, where the surroundings of the track really narrow up. We've seen quite a few heroics in this race so far, but I think Kostecki, he's just going to try and chip away at it.
One of the other things that we've seen in this race, and it's a bit of a cliche that we associate with endurance races at Bathurst, is that safety cars breed safety cars, and that's certainly been the case today. Typically, when there has been a safety car intervention, you've had the field bunched up, you've had cars on varying strategies, and you've had back markers being mixed up with the race leaders, and therefore you've had cars travelling at different speeds while all being quite tightly bunched together. The propensity for more incidents has been quite high, and we've seen that safety car, more often than not, has shortly been followed by another one.
Indeed. I wonder if we'll see just one more before the final stint gets going, and whether or not, if that happens, drivers would elect to jump in and take tyres again in the pits. I wouldn't expect that they would, but maybe someone is brave enough to try. We just checked in before with the Evolution Racing Team number 26. They are having a full service. They're taking tyres, and Ethan Griggolt is finally back in that car, having last driven it in the second stint of the day.
And we know that he's very fast as well. He was racing for the lead when he was in that car earlier on, so they are going to be buried well back in the pack down in position number 12, but there's still plenty of time in the race, and I think that Ethan Griggolt, now that he's back behind the wheel of that car, will have the speed to press on, so watch out for perhaps a late charge for this car. They need to get a bit of a wriggle on here, though, because the safety car's already on Conrod Straight, and are we going to get a restart this time around, or are we going to spend another lap?
I think we are, because the what OSR does when operating the safety car is they flash the headlights of the Porsche, and Henry King is not flashing the lights now. He was on the previous lap, so we should expect the safety car to pull away from the field very shortly, and for Jackson Suzlin-Harlow to control the start. That ERT number 26 is going to have to drive pretty much at race pace in order to catch up to the back of the field. And in fact, actually, Ethan Griggolt has found the back of the field. Yanni Sotiriou is trying his best to get that Ferrari around, but he's hitting the wall. So not a great start here for Ethan Griggolt as the safety car pulls into the pits. That ERT car is going to be held back. It's something chronic. But here we go then, Lockie. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, when is he going to accelerate and re-begin the race?
So we're inside the final 2 hours of the 2020 virtual Bathurst 12-hour. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, who did a stunning job in qualifying and in the opening stint, back in control of the United Sim Sports car for the closing stanza of this race, but he's got some hungry drivers that he's going to have to hold behind. Simone Maria Marcheno, who's been very quick today, is right on his tail, and Brody Kostecki just a couple of cars back as well. There is Kostecki, you can see in the blue and yellow car, slicing his way through the laps traffic. He's already rounded up 2 or 3 of those back markers. He'll only have, I think, 1 laps car left to pass. Yep, that's going to be the situation for Brody Kostecki, so he'll be the man on a mission as well.
Indeed he will, having just made his way past Paul Mansell. Brett Barker is going to be the next car ahead for Kostecki. He's already on the headlight flash, but the leaders are pushing each other super hard here. Simone Maria Marcheno managed to be right on board with the start. I expected Jackson Suzlin-Harlow to go early and take them by surprise, get a bit of a gap, but that hasn't happened. Harlow and Marcheno bumper to bumper across the top of the mountain just about.
Yeah, excellent restart for both of our race leaders, and it's the United Sim Sports and the Alta Sea Sports cars that are absolutely nose to tail as they head down through the dipper. Kostecki has cleared all of the lab's traffic, so he's now got some clear track between himself and our 2 race leaders, so that's good news for him. There he is, coming down into Forest Elbow. However, he has lost some 4 seconds to the race leaders. There's Riley Preston in 4th. Philip Worley a bit further back in position 5. Matthew Bowler, that car's had a solid run today. It runs in position number 6 ahead of the second car of race Kane Murray. Walpole in the wall and a pile up, and that is Ethan Grigolt's been caught up in that. He was trying to work his way up through the field, obviously, but a big tangle of cars getting together, including a couple of our top 10 runners coming down into the dipper.
Indeed, it looks like everyone's managed to get away from that. We'll see what happened to Murray Walpole here. And it was down at the dipper, which seems to be a popular place for these kinds of incidents to happen. So what went on with him here? Tommy Saunter-Chun. Oh, he got checked up there as the pack went into the dipper, and poor Walpole just got caught up in that. Oh, and Ethan Griggolt bumped Saunter-Chun around the right way, but after that restart for the ERT26, they already suffered some issues on the final formation lap, and this has just set their race back even further, even more damage to repair. You see as Griggolt comes around, he's like, oh no, oh no, oh no, there's nowhere to go.
Hopefully not too much damage to that car. He managed to slow it down a fair bit before the impact, but could still be that he's got maybe a bit of steering damage. The battle's on for the lead here. Marcheno all over the back of Jackson Suzlin-Harlow across the top of Mount Panorama. He's not going to go down without a fight, Marcheno, and he is putting the pressure on the United Sim Sports car. It's a flat-out sprint race between 2 fired-up BMW M4 drivers here at Mount Panorama.
This is an excellent battle, and I love watching this kind of thing in the final stages of a race at the mountain. You get to see just where each driver gains their advantage. Oh, slight slide for Marcheno on the run into Forest Elbow. He gathers it up, though, and stays within the draft range of Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. He's got to focus entirely on the exit of Forest Elbow if he wants a chance at a move. But the big question is, how early do you go for a move if you feel that you have the pace? Because these guys are so far ahead of everyone else. Yes, Kostecki is continuing to chip away at them, but I think if I were Marcheno, I'd want to stay behind Harlow and just measure myself a bit, make sure that I have a bit more rubber saved, because if you pass him a bit too early, then there's every chance that he could come back at you before the end.
The other thing as well is we've still got 1 pit stop to go for everybody to get to the end of this race. So rather than going too hard and maybe making an over-aggressive manoeuvre for track position, you might actually be better off sitting in second position, sitting in the slipstream, saving fuel, giving yourself a chance to make a shorter final pit stop and jumping your opponent in the pits. That might be the smart play here.
May very well be, but for now he's going to continue to sit behind Harlow. And you see a very good exit out of Griffins as well. We're going to compare lap times. 2:04.5 for both of our leaders is almost bumper to bumper coming out of the cutting. Marcheno was very good through that corner, but we might see the gap extend as they come across the top of the mountain. It was another 2:04.5 for Brody Kostecki. So our three leading cars very evenly matched right now. This is going to be an interesting finish.
And you can see that they're all pretty much driving qualifying laps at the moment. They're running right to the ragged edge, right out to the concrete wall. Barely a millimetre of clearance on either side of the car, or between the car and those very unforgiving concrete walls here at Mount Panorama. It's going to be all about keeping it mistake-free in this closing stint. Marcheno feints to the inside, moves back to the outside, looking to maximise the exit. Look at how close Suzel and Harlow was to the wall on the exit of Forest Elbow. There was barely a cigarette paper width between the rear guard of the United SimSports BMW and the concrete wall on the exit of Forest Elbow.
Coming up to the braking zone for the chase, you see that Marcheno did have a bit of momentum on the first part of the straight, but I think he is lifting off a bit early and saving those extra few millilitres of fuel that will translate into a quicker final pit stop for the Altus 43. Continuing to pressure into Murray's corner. Another aspect of this battle is the psychological factor. If Marcheno can stay within this gap to the United SimSports car, he could potentially pressure Harlow into making a mistake. But again, with the nature of the track, how narrow it is up the top, maybe he doesn't want that. If Harlow makes a mistake, say in the S's for example, then whatever incident happens, Marcheno is going to get caught up in it. He's got to be careful.
Whoa. Because we've just had a safety car, it'll be a while before they catch up to any more laps traffic you would expect. Wow. Right on the ragged edge, these two. Great to watch. It's always fantastic in any endurance race at Mount Panorama when you see a flat-out sprint in the closing stages. And that's what we've got on our hands right now. 0.2 per second is all that separates our race leaders. So we've got an hour and 44 minutes left on the clock in what's shaping up to be another classic edition of the Bathurst 12 Hour. We don't get to do it in real life in 2021, but these drivers are going to make sure that the virtual spectacle that we've got is going to be just as good as what we would have seen in real life had we been visiting the mountain with GT3 cars in summer 2021.
And you know, I think one of the big advantages of doing it on the sim like we can is the cars that you are seeing. The BMW M4 in its GT3 spec actually doesn't exist as a real car yet, and some weaving down the straight there for Harlow, trying to break the draft and stymie the fuel saving for Simona Maria Marcheno. But you're getting a bit of a glimpse at the future of GT3 racing right here with the BMW M4. BMW worked out a deal with iRacing to put the car in as a prototype in the GT3 class, and it's since become one of the most popular options in GT3 racing on the sim. And I guess the BMW motorsport bosses, if they are watching this, they're going to be hoping for the same level of success the car's seeing here as it will in real life.
So 2 minutes 4.6 for Harlow, 2:04.7 for Marcheno, 2:04.6 for Kostecki. Preston in position 4, he's in the 4.6s as well, so he's also got good pace. It's having a look a bit further down the field. All of the other key runners are in the high 5s, the 6s and even the 7s. Cooper Webster's pretty much the next fastest car on the racetrack, 2:05.4 for Webster that time around, but we still think that car's probably battling a bit of damage. Ethan Grigalt, best that he can manage at the moment at 2:07, so quite possibly a bit of residual damage on the Evolution Racing Team car after that contact that we saw at the dipper just after the safety car restart.
Indeed, and we just saw Dennis Gatterick back in the TM Racing Ferrari, making his way past Reese Keane for 7th place on track. But our leaders continuing to have themselves stuck together bumper to bumper. They can't leave each other alone at this stage. You see just how hard they're pushing coming into the dipper. I marvel every single time a car goes through there how the grip of the front tyres isn't just overwhelmed and they don't ricochet off the walls. Another close push there on the exit of Forest Elbow as Aaron Russell pits the Torque Inc. Lamborghini. The weaving begins again. This is quite tactical here from Jackson.
It's actually, race control probably won't be that impressed by it. When you're on the straight, you are supposed to drive in a straight line. You're not supposed to be weaving left and right. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jackson Suzel Harlow gets a bit of a slap on the wrist from race control if he keeps up that sort of behaviour. We've
gotten a penalty that has just come through for the number 100 XCM machine for contact on lap 275. Murray Walpole currently in that car, so that was for the big incident on the restart. Walpole, of course, getting into the back of Tommy Saunter-Chun, and with Walpole being the car going into the rear of him, he was deemed at fault for that, so that's going to be a pit lane penalty for the number 100 car as up Mountain Straight the leaders come once again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough call at this stage of the race. And we have seen that race control have been fairly strict when it comes to enforcing driving standards in this race, particularly early on. They took a pretty dim view of cars that were making unnecessary contact in the early stages of what is a very long endurance race. We've completed 280 laps here at Mount Panorama. We've got an hour and 40 minutes to go. As I mentioned in the broadcast earlier this morning, the record for the distance, the greatest distance completed in the real life Bathurst 12-hour, 314 laps, which was completed by the winning Bentley in last year's event. At our current rate of lap progression, we are on target to well and truly break that record today.
Indeed. I think one of the main reasons we've been able to do that, despite the huge number of safety cars, there hasn't been any red flags so far in this race. Race control does have the ability to red flag, as the stewards will be taking a look at that again. We'll have to wait and see if they take a dim view of that weaving. But yeah, there hasn't been a situation so far in the race where the red flag has had to be brought out. We did see 3 red flags, or 4, I think, in qualifying yesterday. But for the most part, it seems the race has escaped those long delays.
So we're all building up towards this last round of pit stops. So based on fuel range, they'll actually be able to get to a point, or they should be able to get to a point where they can fairly comfortably stop and get home on fuel. We're seeing a pretty tight battle here between Reece Keane and Cooper Webster, the contest for positions 8 and 9. And in fact, this will be a change of position. Yeah, Cooper Webster pulling out of the draft on Conrod Straight and getting up alongside Reece Keane on the run down into the chase. I think he might have had a bit of a slipstream advantage there from one of the back markers as well, which just helped to give him a bit of a tow to get the move done. It was a breaking duel into the chase, and Cooper Webster turns quite aggressively across the front of the DPR car to grab that position.
Yeah, once again, the chase being a very highly contested zone, as that's another problem for the TD Sport guys. Tommy Saunter-Chun finding the gravel at the chase. We might have to go back and take a look at how that went down for poor Tommy. It's not been a great last few laps for these guys, and remains to be seen if he did it on his own. Jamie McKnight in the Ferrari. Oh, this our director's saying this might be a hardware failure for Tommy Saunter-Chun. No, they came together just after the kink and just avoided cleaning up a bunch of other cars. McKnight heavily into the wall, and I think that's almost terminal damage for that Ferrari.
Yeah, I think that'll be his day done. So they were side by side through the kink. Saunter-Chun was on the right.
Oh, came across.
Yeah. And McKnight out of control, bang, hard into the concrete wall. He missed the tyre section that's in there on the other side. That's a similar incident to what we saw with the Porsche in Bathurst 12-hour practice a couple of years ago. This is what it looks like out the back of Scott Rankin's car. Keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. Got a feeling that this is not the end of this replay. Does the car suddenly appear in the rear view of the BMW?
I think it was the car
No, it
ahead
must have
of
actually
Rankin
gone
with
ahead,
the near
yeah.
miss. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Yanni Sotirio in the Gentleman Sim Racing Club Ferrari with perhaps one of the greatest near misses of this race. He was close in the slipstream of the BMW up ahead. You see the incident happen between McKnight and Saunter Chun, and they fire across the gravel trap, and this is how close it came. Whoa, there's McKnight. Very lucky escape there for Yanni.
The only thing that's been more amazing than the crashes that have happened at the chase today has been the crashes that haven't happened at the chase today. There has been some epic near misses, I can tell you.
Yes, indeed. Well, looks like that wasn't enough to bring out the safety car again, so the guys are going to continue to battle. Riley Preston starting to catch up to Brody Kostecki here. 2:05.3 for Kostecki on the last lap with a 2:04 for Riley Preston. So either there's been traffic for these guys, which is unlikely, or Kostecki made a little bit of an error on a previous lap, because Preston's looking good here to challenge for the podium.
Yeah, this has been a good drive from Riley Preston. In fact, he and Ian Ford have both done a stellar job in this race, and I think Riley Preston will be on board that car through to the checkered flag. Let's not forget the third driver in that team is Scott Fontaine, who is part of the SimSpeed TV management team. So he is potentially on for a Bathurst 12-hour podium, and it's looking like it could very much become a reality because Riley Preston's all over the back of Brody Kostecki. Big challenge under brakes into the chase. He's got the eyes on, and Brody Kostecki's under huge pressure. Don't worry about being chased by Jamie Whincup in the Bathurst 1000. This is maximum intimidation coming from Riley Preston on the back of Brody Kostecki right now.
Absolutely, and Kostecki staying in the middle of the road in the chase. He's got that defensive drive down pat for the time being, but Preston looks like he's just building the aggression again and again. Very big checkup coming into the first corner there, almost bumper to bumper between the two cars. What's going to happen at Griffin's? It looks like Preston doesn't have the slipstream for now, and he might have to sit behind Kostecki across the top of the mountain. Gives him a bit of a look, though. Moving around in the mirrors, that's the psychological games happening again. If you can move around in your rival's mirrors and try and distract them, that increases the chance of them making a mistake and you being able to slip through. But this is where it gets very difficult coming through the cutting. Great exit from both of the cars. They're quite even on acceleration out of that corner, but Preston is going to have to deal with single file from here.
What's happening as well is that while those two are battling, they're losing time to the race leaders. Kostecki was staying within about 4 seconds of Harlow and Marchino earlier on, but because he's now in defence mode, having to worry about the attack that's coming from the Evolution Racing Team Ferrari behind, the leaders are starting to disappear up the road. It's now 7.8 seconds between Jackson Suzel and Harlow and Brody Kostecki.
And speaking of that lead battle, Simona Maria Marchino has fallen off the back slightly of Mr. Harlow. The gap now at the front 1 second, so only just within the draft range for Marchino. But for third place, Riley Preston back on the headlight flash button, and he's got momentum in the draft. Is Kostecki lifting off? Kostecki lifting off and letting Riley Preston go. So there's something happening in that car that that I don't think we're fully aware of. Maybe that was a lift just to help Kostecki get a bit of fuel saving down and shorten his final pit stop. But I didn't expect the move to be completed in that way.
No, I would have expected Brody Kostecki to fight a bit harder for it than that, but you're right. Maybe it's some tactical fuel saving from that car to try and, get a shorter final pit stop. That's an interesting one, I have to say. I would have thought that Kostecki would have made much more of a contest out of it than that, but he's going to tuck into the slipstream of the Ferrari now. Well, maybe it's a case of Kostecki going, you know what, we've still got more than 90 minutes to go in this race. It's not going to be won and lost here. I'm content just to sit in behind Riley Preston, bide my time, and I'll go on the attack again in the final stint.
Well, that's going to be one story to keep an eye on in the final hour of this Bathurst 12 hour. Riley Preston still driving at 10 tenths at the moment and starting to gap Kostecki there coming across the top. We got to remember, especially from qualifying yesterday, the Ferraris are very good across the top of the mountain, very nimble in the second sector. We see Timothy Febben pitting the Mach 1 Esports car, and Will Jesberg in the Team Hyperdrive car having to go wide in the first corner to let another car go. It's been quite the challenge for the Team Hyperdrive boys. They started down in 29th position, and they've had a few setbacks along the way. Dennis Gatterick, meanwhile, have a look at the gap he has pulled over Matthew Bowler. Got the positions mixed up there. Gatterick chasing down Matthew Bowler, as it seems. And 8 tenths faster on the last lap, we're hearing from our director. So quite the charge here from the TM Racing Ferrari. We talked a bit earlier how they've always been in contention, but this final charge in the last stint from Dennis Gatterick is something I'm really looking forward to seeing.
It's very, very quick at the beginning of the race, and he hasn't driven the car until now, since then. So we know that he's quick and definitely he's got the potential to make up some more positions before we get to the end of this race. Speaking of that subject, it's going to be interesting to see if there's any more driver changes coming up in the final round of pit stops. Our leading car number 69, we expect that Jackson Susel and Harlow will be on board through to the checkered flag. But car number 43, Simone Marie Marcheno, I reckon he will probably hand it back to James Scott for the final stint, because again, we haven't seen James Scott in that car since the beginning of the race. And he, you would have to say, as good as Marcheno has been, I think that Scott has probably just been a fraction quicker. So I reckon we might see a driver change in that car.
Yeah, James Scott really came on song in 2020 with his exploits in the V8 Scops series, and I'd certainly expect him to put on a show in the final stint. We're looking again at the battle for third between Preston and Kostecki, and now the gap has stabilised a bit. Kostecki just keeping himself within that draft margin, not pushing Preston too hard. And there is Cooper Webster in the 83 Altus car. He is currently chasing down Gatterick and looking quite fast. You see the gap decreasing there. Last lap time was a 2:04.98 for Cooper Webster. Meanwhile, a 2:05.4 for Gatterick. So keep an eye out for a potential three-car battle to form between the NSR 119 ahead of both these guys and TM and Astro Gaming Altus Esports.
Webster's still nursing some damage with that car, as we suspect he might be. Then he's doing a good job to punch out lap times that are only about half a second slower than the race leaders. And again, he's another one who might be able to make up some spots before the end of this race. The other driver lapping in the 2:04 bracket is Ethan Grigol, who has worked his way up into the top 10. Again, we suspect that he probably has a bit of damage after the incident that happened on the top of the mountain after the last safety car restart, but it's still not affecting the performance of that car too badly at the moment.
Yeah, certainly not. Here's the car in P15 right now, the 9.5 Sim Sport machine. Peter Crossingham at the wheel of that one, and he's got a lapped car in between him and the XRC3 machine piloted by Chris Hughes. 1.3 seconds the gap between those drivers, and we'll see what kind of lap times they're setting coming up to the back. They've got the Evolution Racing Team car as well of Ethan Griggolt, and looks like Crossingham letting Ethan Griggolt go there, as that is out of position in terms of laps. So that battle is going to last a bit longer for the position at 14. I'm hearing that the track temperature has dropped heaps, and it has. It's down below 40 degrees for the first time since the morning hours, and I have noticed a couple of clouds passing over the circuit as we're now in the last section of the day. It's currently coming up to about 4:23 in the afternoon in sim time, so the track is just going to keep cooling.
So the big question then, Race, is what sort of lap times are we going to see? We saw them get down into some Hollywood numbers early this morning. High 201 was the best lap time that we saw. In fact, it's Cooper Webster with a 201.90 who does hold the fastest lap of the race. The only other car to record a sub 202 lap time is our race leader, 201.96, which was recorded by Jackson Suzlin Harlow during his morning stint. Let's see if they can get down into those sorts of lap times again now that the track's starting to cool out.
Hans Brunswick there just glancing off the wall, coming down into the S's. And he, Luke Rosella, and John Derrick have had quite the race in the BMW Team Schnitzel machine. They're on the verge of breaking back into the top 10. If there's a problem for one of the cars ahead, then they certainly stand to capitalize off that. It'd be a great run for them after starting in 25th. Speaking of other big movers, that number 73 DPR car started in 24th, a position ahead of the Team Schnitzel car, and they are running in 9th place. So a good position for them to be in at the end, and they'll be hoping that they can hold on to that.
So I have to ask the question, Team Schnitzel, are they going to expand to a 3-car operation for next year with a Team Chips and a Team Salad BMW?
Oh, I certainly hope they do.
Just as long as chips are on the side and not on top, as our director Jake Kennedy's just pointed out. Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I hate it when restaurants do that. Matthew Norris brings the Hyperdrive 218 into the pits. And Gaderick continuing his pursuit of Matthew Bowler. The gap now under 2 seconds. Gaderick pushing very hard in that machine. And I've been quite impressed with that TM Racing Ferrari ever since I saw them setting the first lap time of the day in the qualifying session yesterday.
And Dennis Gaderick continuing to take time out of Matt Bowler, who's just ahead, but they are both being caught by Cooper Webster, who is just behind. So very shortly, that's going to be a 3-way contest for positions 6, 7 and 8. Here's the margins between the cars. You can see as they come out of Forest Elbow, there's Cooper Webster, the Altus Esports car that's just starting to range up behind Dennis Gaderick on Conrod Straight. And just ahead of Dennis Gaderick is Matthew Bowler there in that fluoro yellowy green machine.
Well, Matthew Bowler trying his best here to hold on to that 6th spot, but Gaderick's pace just seems it's one of those slow burners. I think this battle, Gaderick is just trying to take care of his car, but still chipping away at that gap in 7th. Clean line through the first corner as well. You see how much rubber has been laid down over the course of this 12-hour race. I mean, if the conditions had stayed the same, if we were still seeing those very cool temperatures, then with a track like this, we'd probably be seeing times below 201, but the weather does put paid to that. Gaderick has to be careful here because Cooper Webster's starting to decrease the gap as well. 1 and a bit seconds between all of these cars now, and it looks like that 3-car battle I predicted earlier is going to be an eventuality.
I reckon Simone Marcheno must have had some traffic on this lap because the margin was about 2 seconds between himself and Jackson Suzlin Harlow. All of a sudden, it's opened up to about 3.5 seconds. So Marcheno's lost a lot of time for some reason on the most recent lap. Remember, he was right up behind Jackson Suzlin Harlow for a number of laps. But all of a sudden, the margin has elongated between our first and second place cars.
Yeah, and I've just seen why. It's an encounter with 2 lapped Ferraris for Marcheno earlier on his lap 288. The Gentleman's Sim Racing Club Ferrari 203, James Mooney, just tried to negotiate the fellow Ferrari of Mark Peck, the Mauler Esports car. They were both side by side across the top of the mountain just as Marcheno was coming up to them. So that is where all that time has been lost.
And Brody Kostecki back ahead of Ryan with Preston. So those cars have swapped positions once again as well. Kostecki back up into third.
Yeah, I'm going to check back and see where that happened. It looks like it was Preston seemed to have lifted off. Oh, no, James Mooney, who we were just talking about earlier. He has found the wall there at Skyline. He's going to have to get that thing turned around. Awkward spot there.
Yeah, can he get it turned around? It's not an easy spot to get moving if you've got traffic approaching rapidly, which is generally the case at McPhillamy Park. There's traffic that's going to be approaching at a pretty rapid rate of knots. This is what it looks like on board his car, and you can't blame James Mooney for not wanting to drive out into the oncoming traffic and potentially causing an incident. Now there looks to be a bit of a gap. Not going to be there for very long because here comes Brody Kostecki, and no, James Mooney still parks there. Now, does this get race control interested in bringing out the safety car? There is Nick Parker, who's behind the wheel, and yes, the safety car has been called 18th safety car of the Bathurst 12 hour, and it comes with 1 hour and 21 minutes left on the clock. This is a very awkward time for the teams to have to deal with the safety car intervention race, because I don't think we're close enough to the end of the race to be able to pit and get home on fuel.
Yeah, we're not. So this is going to be quite interesting, especially for the leaders. Do they elect to come in? They do. The number 69 bringing it into the pits and getting followed in by the 43. Speaking of the 43, the reason why James Mooney found the wall was because Marchino made contact with him in McPhillamy Park and sent him into the wall. So some trouble there with lapping cars.
Interesting to see that incident and see if Marchino might be deemed to be at fault for that one. So here we go. We're going to check out a replay to find out what happened. So there you go. You can see at the back of the shot, there comes Simone Maria Marchino. Now, he's already lost a bit of time at this point to Jackson Suzel and Harlow, and he won't want to be losing too much more. So he'll be looking to try and get past that Ferrari as quickly as he can. Now, just to make things even more complicated, there's another Ferrari there as well. So both cars dive to the inside at Reed Park to negotiate their way around that slow one. Here we go. Here's the replay. There it is. Nose-to-tail contact. Only very light, but it's enough to put Mooney into the wall. And the big question that I have to ask now, Reese, is that we've already seen penalties handed out for race leaders turning around back markers. The precedent was set earlier on with Jackson, Suzel and Harlow getting penalised. So does the Altus Esports car cop a drive-through for that one?
Well, looking at that onboard for the 203, it looks like Mooney lifted and tried to go narrow on the exit of McPhillamy to try and let Marchino through, but the cars were close enough together that there wasn't much time for him to react. And the leader having come into the pits, well, the TM Racing Ferrari has stayed out and they now hold the lead of the race. So remains to be seen whether they're going to come into the pits at the end of the next lap, or if, oh, there we go, driver change for the number 43 as well. Andrew Carl is back in the car, and we should expect him into the end. So, unfortunately, Lockie, it looks like James Scott not going to be making another appearance.
Yeah, it's an interesting call there, and I reckon that they've also taken tyres during that pit stop as well. Because, yeah, that was a longer pit stop for that car. So, yes, fresh tyres for car number 43, and as a result, it has dropped a couple of positions. So, the car that's not stopped is the Gatterick machine. Car number 99 has not come down pit lane under this safety car. So, as a result, Dennis Gatterick now leads this race, but he is out of sequence on pit strategy compared to those behind him. Jackson, Suzel and Harlow has stayed in car number 69. He's in second position. Brody Kostecki still in position 3 behind the wheel with car number 36. Ian Ford has jumped into car number 13, so a driver change going on at the Evolution Racing team. Ian Ford's been seriously quick in that car today as well. He'll be looking to take the fight up to the race leaders at the restart. And Andrew Carl, as mentioned in the Altus Esports car, has dropped some spots as a result of that team electing to take tyres at that pit stop.
Indeed. Well, the safety car starting to rev up a bit, potentially, to get into the pits, but I think the field is going to stay out for another lap here because Mooney is still at a stop. We're going to go to a quick break here on SimSpeed TV. The lights back on the safety car as we see more cars pull into the pits. We're lined up for a fantastic finish here. Potential splash and dash for our leaders, but Gatterick out there in the lead. The TM Racing Ferrari could throw a spanner into the works. You're watching the Smith & Sons Bathurst 12-hour presented by Oceanic Sim Racing and Aussie Mixed and Fixed. SimSpeed TV will be back in just a moment.
Edition of the Smith & Sons Bathurst 12-hour here on the SimSpeed TV network. Lachlan Mansell behind the microphone, getting set for a race start, and the race has become intriguing once again with 1 hour and 13 minutes remaining on the clock. Dennis Gatterick, now the race leader, he elected not to pit under that safety car. We believe that everybody's going to have to come through pit lane for a splash of fuel to get to the checkered flag. Dennis Gatterick, by choosing not to pit, has gained track position, but he will have a longer pit stop than everybody else when we go racing once again. A big question mark as well over one of the Altus Esports cars getting tangled up with the back marker to create that last safety car intervention. As Gatterick, who leads away ahead of Jackson, Susan and Harlow, who's in second position. Brody Kostecki in position number 3 at the moment, has a lapped car that he has to negotiate his way around. We go back to Ian Ford in the Evolution Racing Team Ferrari. Philip Worley is next in the DPR Sim Racing Machine. Andrew Carl, the car that's potentially the subject of controversy, in position 6. And a look at Brody Kostecki monstering the back of the backmarker BMW over Reid Park. This is high-risk stuff with an hour and 12 minutes left on the clock. Brody Kostecki's impatient because he can see Jackson, Susan and Harlow getting further and further ahead. He does not want to lose any more time behind this back marker than absolutely necessary, and he dives past it across the top of the mountain.
Well, move completed there for Brody Kostecki. Now he has more clear track between he and Harlow. But for Dennis Gatterick on those older tyres, it's going to be quite the interesting run towards the finish. We ride on board briefly with Ethan Griggold, and there is the gap back from Dennis Gatterick. He's got a nice gap to Jackson, Suslin, Harlow, and at the end of the next lap we'll be able to get a proper picture of what the relative pace is like. We should still expect that Ferrari to be jumping into the pits maybe with 45 minutes to go. Andrew Carl and Cooper Webster, the two Altus Esports cars, together with Ethan Griggold just behind them, with Braden Nash dealing with lap traffic as well. That's quite awkward coming down to Murray's. He's going to go for the move on the number 55, and he is through. Thank goodness for that. These frenetic opening laps really testing the drivers.
Braden Nash has actually become put on quite a show for us in this race. We saw that he had a really good battle with Jared Fuel-Cell earlier on in the day, where the two cars exchanged positions a couple of times while they were battling inside the top three. So not too much of a surprise that the team have elected to put Braden Nash back on board that car for the final stint of this race. But for me, the thing is, in terms of the lead battle, Dennis Gaterick, we know that his final pit stop is going to be a lot longer than everybody else because he didn't put fuel in, or didn't come down pit lane for a stop under that safety car. He got track position. He's going to have to pay for it later on with a longer pit stop though. So what he needs to do now is make the most of the cleared track, push as hard as he can, build as much of a margin as he can over the cars behind so that the time that he loses in the final pit stop will cost him as few positions as possible.
Well, oh, that looks a bit awkward there. Coming up to McPhillamy, couple of cars going side by side. Cooper Webster just found his way past them. Ethan Griggault as well. But Carl just making his way a bit further ahead of those guys as we see what happened here. Oh, looks like the Altus machine caught up behind a sister BMW and stays wide, and McPhillamy Park lets them go, but that is an extra few seconds of time that both of those cars would have wanted to keep.
So, yeah, Cooper Webster and Nathan Griggault currently battling over position there in positions 7 and 8. Both of those cars sustained a bit of damage in incidents a bit earlier on in the race. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, now that his car and tyres are fully up to temperature, starting to make up some time on our race leader, Dennis Gaterick.
He is indeed, having set a 2:04.1 on that last lap, and almost 3 wide running here as Webster and Griggault battle super hard. Former teammates at Evolution Racing Team, remember, with Cooper Webster going to Altus some time ago, and the draft is there for the Ferrari, but he's going to be on the outside coming into Griffin's Bend. This is going to be awkward here for Ethan Griggault. Can he make his way past? He can, actually, with that car being a little cleaner than the Altus 83, less damage. He's able to keep that straight line advantage and was able to slip on by just before they got to the turning point.
So it'll be interesting to see what Ethan Griggault can do here, because any damage to that car, they might have been able to rectify it during that last pit stop. So Ethan Griggault, we saw that he was pretty speedy earlier on in the race, so if he can get some track position, he might actually be able to make up some more spots in the last hour of this race and perhaps challenge for a top 5 finish.
Let's see if he can do that. They do have some issues here just up ahead of them. Benjamin Siren and Jesse Butler are battling hard for 17th and 18th. Griggault goes up the inside of Siren, and Webster's going to get on by as well on the exit of the elbow. Now back in the draft of Ethan Griggault. Jesse Butler just up ahead of them is going to have to let them through too. Here's 4th and 5th, Ian Ford and Andrew Carl. And Carl's going to go for the move here at the chase. And he is through at the turning point, and not much of a fight there from Ian Ford. Ethan Griggault makes his way past Jesse Butler, and Butler breaks early to let Cooper Webster go as well. And we're hearing from race control no further action for that incident that Simone Maria Marcheno had with Mr. Moody that brought out the safety car. So the number 43 is in the clear.
That, I have to say, is a massive get-out-of-jail-free card for that car, because I would not have been at all surprised if race control had handed down a penalty. Now, in fairness, they do have access to more data than what we do. They would have had a look at onboard vision for both cars. It could have been that the Moody car maybe lifted off the throttle at a spot where Marcheno wasn't expecting him to, and slowed up more than what Marcheno was anticipating, and that's why the incident happened. But I still think that's a pretty lucky escape for car number 43.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, Benjamin Siren and Jesse Butler continue to battle here for 17th and 18th, but for the lead, it's now down to half a second between Jackson Suzlin-Harlow and Dennis Gaterick. And Harlow has put in some fantastic times over the last few laps. Dennis Gaderick has been able to stay within the 2-minute 4-second bracket, but just a couple of tenths per lap taken out by Jackson Suzlin Harlow. His last lap, a 2:04.3. So that United Sim Sports BMW looking pacey once again. And I think we should expect a move in the next couple of laps.
Yeah, he's racing Jackson Suzlin Harlow, and we've seen that he's had a lot of success here at Mount Panorama in various forms of sim racing competition. And look at how much ground he's making in the slipstream on Dennis Gaderick as they dive down into the chase, deep under brakes for both of them, and it's only 0.2 of a second now separating our two race leaders. Dennis Gaderick's mirrors full of the United Sim Sports BMW, which has led so much of this Bathurst 12 hour. As mentioned before, it was the pace setter in qualifying yesterday. Jackson Suzlin Harlow led the race earlier on today. They had some setbacks, they had a penalty, they had an off-track excursion at the chase, but they were able to fight back from it. And now on strategy, you would have to say that they're in the box seat, but there's still the hard work that they have to do. They still have they still have another 64 minutes of racing to get through before they can taste victory.
Indeed, and I think Harlow's going to have to wait another half a lap or so before he wants to make a move for the lead here on Dennis Gaderick. Bit more news from race control. The number 55 car has been given a pit lane penalty. It was for contact back on lap 281 with the 144 Gentlemen's Sim Racing Club car down at the chase. Yanni Sotirio just turned around by Darren Whittington at the apex, so that car's going to have to come in for a penalty soon. But for the lead, Jackson Suzlin Harlow continuing to push Mr. Gaderick across the top of the mountain. Loving this this view from the top of the BMW. Shows you just how hard they're pushing, close to the wall at every opportunity. Now down on the brakes into Forest Elbow. This is where the move will potentially be made. The draft down Conrod Straight. Gaderick, of course, a bit lighter on fuel, so that's something that Harlow's going to have to contend with. But down the straight, it's looking like the draft is in effect now for Jackson Suzlin Harlow. No move at the chase, maybe not. Away he goes, tries up the inside of Dennis, and Gaderick gives him the room, but maintains the line around the outside. The lead battle being very respectful right now. Harlow getting on the headlight flash, but that's not out of anger. It is out of, hey, I'd like to pressure you into a mistake so I can make this a little bit easier for myself.
Interesting to see how long this battle continues, because if they start dicing with one another for track position, Brody Kostecki's only 3.6 seconds behind them. And Brody Kostecki, well, he was quicker. He was about half a second quicker than both of our race leaders last time through. So he'll be quite happy for Gaderick and Harlow to keep battling one another, because he can just keep closing in. But here comes Jackson Suzlin Harlow up the inside at Griffin's Bend. A textbook move, and in the end there wasn't anything that Gaderick could do to fight that one. Harlow had the speed, he had the momentum, he got across to the inside of the track, and he was able to position his BMW perfectly to make that move through. So the United Sim Sports car back to the lead of the race.
Indeed, working out very nicely for the United squad there, and going to be interesting to see what Gaderick and the TM Racing crew decide to do from here when they're going to bring it into the pits again, and how many positions they're going to potentially lose. But between Ethan Griggolt and Cooper Webster, the battle continues for 7th and 8th. And these guys have been locked together since the safety car restart, right off the curb there on the exit of McPhillamy Park. Really loving this fight between the two former teammates. Altus Esports, of course, an offshoot of Evolution Racing Team, you could say. It started a couple of years back when a bunch of Evolution Racing Team drivers decided to break away and make their own team. And they're two powerhouse squads in Australian sim racing, the ERT and Altus boys. But Cooper Webster just sitting pretty in the draft of Ethan Griggolt. They do have some positions coming up for them. They've got the 6th place car of Philip Worley, the DPR number 72, just up ahead of them there. And this is all fighting for position now on track. The car up ahead of them is the sister ERT car with Ian Ford at the wheel in the 13.
Fastest driver on the track at the moment is Andrew Carl in 4th position. There's a good reason for that. He took fresh tyres at that team's last pit stop, so he's got the tyres that are in the best condition of any of the front runners at the moment. So now that we know that that car's clear of any further action by the stewards, Andrew Carl's free to race on, and at the moment he is railing in the race leaders. So the number 43 car could well become a factor as we get towards the end of this race.
Certainly could. 1 hour to go. This is where it stands at the moment in the Smith & Sons Bathurst 12 hour. We're coming on for an excellent finish here. And the 3 cars together, 4th, 5th and 6th.
Oh! Cooper Webster at the cutting as he pulled it up, and he's done it. What a move. Not very often that you can see somebody successfully make a move through there, and it was a very late decision as well, but Cooper Webster just fires it down the inside of Ethan Grigolf into the cutting. We need to have a look at this one again, because that was a superb move, and the fact that he was able to pull it off without any sort of contact was brilliant. And full credit to Ethan Grigolf as well to have the awareness that Cooper Webster was up the inside there. He actually tried to do the switchback Ethan Grigolf, but no way that he was able to do that, and Cooper Webster picks up the spot. Fantastic move from Webster.
Indeed, and Ethan Grigolf actually caught the wall on the inside of the cutting there as he tried to do the switchback, so that car's got some minor damage on the front left now. It's not probably going to affect them too much though. He just needs to hang on for now. But next target for Cooper Webster is going to be Philip Worley in the Simrigs Ferrari. Down into the chase once more. You see how much Webster closes up on the brakes and maintains the apex speed at the slowest part of the corner. And I do have to give a lot of credit to the DPR boys as we see the IPA racing machine in the pits. That DPR Ferrari, still one of the cleanest cars in the field. I can't pick out any damage at all on it. They've done very well to be where they are.
It's been a typically consistent and solid performance from a couple of the mainstays of the V8 Scots Championship. Of course, we see Philip Worley, Adam Briggs and Andrew Dyson regularly competing in at the V8 Scots Championship. And they've had some good results, particularly in the endurance races. Right now, though, they've got their hands full, Philip Worley, because he's got an Altus Esports car and an Evolution Racing Team car hunting him down, and Webster's going to go for it again. Up the inside, at the cutting, they'll run side by side on the exit. I don't think Webster's quite going to get the job done this time. He made the move through, of course, on Ethan Grigolf on the previous lap. He just about made it 2 spectacular moves in the space of 2 laps, but that time Worley shut the door and he glances the wall at Sulman Park as well with the right rear of the Altus Esports BMW.
Man, we're going to get another view of that. Webster pushing incredibly hard in the 83, took a bit too much curb on the inside, and that sent him on a crash course almost for the outside wall, and I don't think he actually hit it.
Wow.
Man, it looks like the move is going to be made at the chase, though, because Webster's gotten into the draft of Worley. He's going to have the inside line for the braking zone of the chase. He's going to have to go around the outside here, but Philip Worley electing to let both of them go there on the entry, not worth fighting too hard. And hearing that a car is stopped up at the top of the mountain too. Oh no, that's Jason Bentz in the XCM 100 car. And where is that? That's the Dipper, the exit of the Dipper.
It's a shame because that car was running in 13th position at the time, and the XCM team had actually had quite a solid run today. They'd made some good progress from where they qualified. I don't think we'll need a safety car for this one. It looks like he's managed to get it moving, but he was following somebody quite closely at the time and just lost the rear of it. And in the end, not super heavy contact with the wall, but enough to make it a pretty awkward job to rejoin the racetrack as we turn our attention back to this battle that is continuing between Cooper Webster and Ethan Griggold. It's now the contest for positions 6 and 7. They'll be looking to make up some time on Ian Ford, the next driver up the road as well.
Absolutely will. And you see them all line astern together again. Webster, Griggold, and Worley. And Phillip, I think, doing very well to stick with these guys as they continue around the top of the mountain. It's going to be a bit of extra draft for the DPR 73. Griggold starting to fall back a little bit from Webster. I think the fire has been lit under Cooper Webster now, and he's going to try and jet up to the back of that sister ERT Ferrari. Very fast pace from the Altus BMW right now. 2:05.3 on the last lap, despite those issues with getting past Philip Worley. And Ian Ford only ran 0.2 faster on that last lap. So I think Webster and Griggold with the advantage here.
Let's not forget that in real life, Cooper Webster drives an S5000 car, so he's used to cars that go fast. Is Cooper Webster, and he'll be driving as fast as he possibly can to catch up to Ian Ford. Ethan Griggold still not letting him go, though. And this is a really good battle between two of the powerhouse teams of the Australian sim racing scene in Altus Esports and the Evolution Racing team.
The gap continuing to close to Ian Ford just up ahead. 2:04.9 the previous lap for Ian Ford. 2:04.7 for Cooper Webster. And another 2:04.7 for Ethan Griggold. So they're just starting to chip away at that gap. And from Jason Bentz's message in the InSim text chat just then, I think the XCM 100 is retiring as the draft for Ethan Griggold. He lifts off, though, to stay behind Cooper Webster, not electing to go for the move at Griffins. I think he's having flashbacks to that move at the cutting a few laps ago.
Also, let's not forget that everybody is going to have to come in for another pit stop for a splash and dash at some stage. We are now in the window, by the way, where people will be able to take their final pit stop and get to the end of the race on fuel. Our second place car of Dennis Gaverick should be in sometime within the next 2 or 3 laps, we would expect, because he is now 29.5 laps into his current stint, so there won't be much fuel left in the tank for the second place Ferrari, and he's going to have to come down pit road for that car's final pit stop of the race very shortly.
Indeed he will. Well, Harlow untroubled out there in the lead as we see Guy Leach take over from Paul Mansell in the Injectors Online Ferrari. Those guys are still running excellent. After starting down in 26th position, they've been fighting through the whole race in 12th position. And we have completed 300 laps, by the way. Jackson Suzlin Harlow coming up to the end of his 301st lap here. So this distance record, I think it's going to be borderline, Lockie, but we might just beat it.
Well, we've got 52.5 minutes to complete another, I think, 13 laps it is now to get to the distance record. So we should get there. I reckon quite comfortably, in fact. And in fact, my predicted race distance, we're hearing that the distance predicted to go was 26 laps to go, which will take us up to a total distance of 328 laps. Not bad at all when you consider the number of safety cars that we had in the first half of the race.
Yeah, agreed. Jackson Harlow starting to come up on some traffic. He gives them the early alert with the headlight flash. It's Simon Chadwick and Braden McKay who are currently up ahead of the United 69 with the gap that he has to the last minute racing BMW. Well, it's going to be interesting. A bit of drama there across the top of the mountain for Harlow. Had to be let by there by the Lamborghini of McKay. And McKay actually briefly stopping on the circuit to let all of the leaders through at once. Meanwhile, for 10th and 11th, John Derrick, the BMW Team Schnitzel car. It's they've had a very tough one, have the Schnitzel car. In the first half hour, they were turned at Forest Elbow, went down to 45th position, and within the next hour, they got back up to 3rd place. And I think they're definitely a contender for drive of the day. Pressuring hard Reese Keane there, as they've got quite a gaggle of cars just up ahead.
Yeah, been a very up and down race for the Team Schnitzel BMW, no question about that. See if they can break into the top 10 in the closing stages of the race. Just to finish in the top 10 in this event is an achievement in itself. Think about all of the concentration that goes into an event like this. Even if you're not actually driving the car, chances are that there's still going to be a lot of work for you to do on spotting and race strategy and all of those other essential elements that come together for any sort of assault on an endurance race.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into preparing for an event like this, as we see the XRC3 car of Chris Hughes jump into the lane, gets out of the way of the 10th place battle. You know, it's not just about the 3 or 4 drivers in the car. There'll be guys working on spotting, working on the numbers for the race strategy. It is truly a team effort in races like this. Checking back in with Griggold and Webster, the 6th and 7th. The pressure's still on there for the BMW, but they've certainly dropped Philip Worley in the last couple of laps.
Yeah, Philip Worley hasn't quite had the pace of the front runners in this final stint. We saw just how easily he let both Webster and Griggold go through, deciding that it was better just to preserve the car and bring home the top 10 result rather than risking getting nerfed off the road and battling against cars that he didn't quite have the outright speed to be fighting against.
Out comes Jesse Butler in the Mach 1 Esports Gold car. Aaron Russell still flying the flag for Torque Inc. Up into 13th position now, and they are the first car a lap down. It's a pretty good fight back, but Jay just saying that they've been that way for most of the race. Torque Inc. have had a very rough time there in that Lamborghini, and the Lambo not the most popular car choice for this field. I remember mentioning in qualifying yesterday, it's been dominated, the entry list, by the BMWs and the Ferraris.
Yeah, which is interesting because the Lamborghini has been a relatively recent addition to the iRacing platform, as we see that Dennis Gabrick finally comes down pit road for a pit stop after 32 laps, so leaving it, I think, there until the very last possible minute before coming in to get that car's final pit stop out of the way. We'll drop a lot of positions, but we won't really get an accurate representation of where that car's going to wind up in the overall order until we see everybody else in the field come down pit road for their final stops.
And as expected, it looks like no tyres for the TM Racing Ferrari, so they're going to be on quite a worn set at the very end. Aaron Russell just making his way through on lapped cars there, and Harlow facing a bit of a challenge here up at the top of the mountain. The Ferrari changing its line in front of him. And that was a brief scare there. Chris Hughes, who we just saw go into the pit lane. A bit of an awkward situation there up at the top, and this is something that will happen quite a bit in multi-class racing, especially up the top of the mountain, even in single-class racing like this is. If there's a slower car, you've got to really depend on them being predictable, and Hughes, well, he saw Harlow jetting up behind him and tried to let him go through the left-handers, but really the safest place is there at McPhillamy Park / Skyline. So things almost going belly up for our leader there, as Brody Kostecki now up into second thanks to that pit stop from the TM Racing machine. He's starting to get onto the charge here for the race lead, and we can't forget about Andrew Carl there either in the number 43.
With 3/4 of an hour to go, this is shaping up to be a three-way fight for victory, I reckon, between the United Sim Sports car, the Last Minute Racing car, and the Altus Esports car. They're the three that are going to be battling for the outright win here. They're the ones that are the fastest on circuit at the moment. And with the lap times that they're doing, I would venture to say that any one of those three cars could win this race. Harlow, spooky moment for him last time around with lapped traffic, and he lost some time to both Kostecki and Carl behind. Let's not forget that they all have to still come in for a splash and dash at some stage as well. This is going to be a fascinating finish.
And I think it's going to be defined by who managed to be the nicest to their fuel tank since the last safety car, because we can fully expect that none of these guys are going to take tyres in their final pit stop. The tyres still have enough in them to last for another stint. But if they're able to just pick up a draft here and there, lift off across the top of the mountain in lapped traffic, then that will provide them a nice advantage when they get the fuel Bowser hooked up to their machine. Carl there still got some traffic to negotiate. Brody Kostecki, meanwhile, I mean, I'm amazed at how much of the gap he has managed to close coming into Forest Elbow. You can see right there in front of him, there is the United Sim Sports car of Jackson Suzlin Harlow. That is the lead battle right now.
So Kostecki's got the target in his sights now, so across the top of the mountain again. It's not much time, but he is grabbing tenths of a second here, tenths of a second there. It all adds up very quickly, especially when we've still got 3/4 of an hour to go and a pit stop still to come for all of these cars. If Kostecki can keep chipping away, if he can get himself within slipstream range, then all of a sudden Jackson Suzlin Harlow is going to get very, very nervous.
Indeed he is. Let's check out the lap times. Harlow into the 203s, 203.9 and a 204.012 for Brody Kostecki. So the gap stayed pretty stable on that particular lap. But Kostecki can still pull a few fast laps out. You see a bit of a headlight flash there from the Last Minute Racing BMW, just giving Harlow the heads up. Hello, I'm coming to get you.
At what point will people start thinking about pitting for their final pit stop? Do you go as deep into this stint as you can? Or do you get your stop done now, get it out of the way, and then just press on as hard as you possibly can?
The issue is where you're going to come out in relation to the traffic, because if you decide to go for the early stop and you absolutely nail it, good news, but then you come out of the pits and suddenly there might be a line of lapped cars ahead of you, so you have to pick your way past them and lose all the time that you would have gained anyway. So the teams will be on it in that respect. They'll have their spotters looking at where the gaps are in the field to allow that stop to be completed sufficiently. The 14th and 15th place battle, meanwhile, still continues on. Simon Chadwick, are we right on board with chasing down Chris Hughes, who we saw briefly have that scary moment with our leader Jackson Suzlin Harlow, and this could be another change for position shortly between these cars.
Thinking about fuel range as well here, Reese. So we've seen that people are capable of getting 32 laps out of a tank of fuel. Maybe a bit less than that. I think the 32 lap stint included a bit of safety car running, but if it's between 30 and 32 laps, then our predicted number of laps left is 21 laps. The cars on the racetrack at the moment are 17 laps into a stint. We're only talking about 5 to 7 laps worth of fuel that they're going to have to put in to get through to the end. So it's going to be very short splash and dash pit stops coming up for our race-leading contenders.
Yeah, and I think if you're Jackson Suzlin Harlow out in the lead, you would want to try and extend it as much as you could, because they're already in a good position here. They're matching Kostecki at the moment, who's chasing them down. And I think don't mess too much with a good thing. You've got a great basis here for getting that final pit stop done maybe in the last 20 minutes of the race.
So here it is on screen at the moment, the battle between our two race leaders. One of the young talents of Australian sim racing, Jackson Suzel and Harlow, leading the way. He's being chased down by a driver who we saw starring at the Bathurst 1000, went wheel to wheel with no less a driver than Jamie Whincup in 2020 and came out on top. And now he's chasing down young Jackson Suzel and Harlow. 1.6 seconds the margin between first and second position. What a conclusion we're set for in the 2021 Bathurst 12 Hour here at Mount Panorama. And what a show you are set for right here on SimSpeed TV in this final 40 and a half minutes.
Coming up to the end of the lap once again, lap 307 will be completed for the number 69. And is it still a 2:03 lap time? Yes, it is. A 2:03.9 once more for Jackson Suzel and Harlow, and a 2:03.972 for Brody Kostecki. Lost a tiny bit on that lap, but we'll see if the pace is ramped up in the next few laps. Ian Ford there in fourth place. He's got himself being chased down by the still battling pair of Cooper Webster and Ethan Grigg-Galt. They haven't left each other alone since we last checked in on them, and there's still just a car length between those two machines. In terms of lap time, they're also still quicker than Ian Ford, and if they don't get in each other's way too much, they should be able to catch up to him by the time the last pit stop comes round.
Problem is that they've been so focused on one another that they're not really making a whole lot of time on Ian Ford at the moment, so they just need to leave each other alone for a little bit, Webster and Grigg-Galt, and focus on catching the car that's ahead of them.
Well, these guys, on the other hand, the NSR Esports squad, Braden Nash at the wheel and briefly leading the race through one of the earlier pit stop cycles, chasing down Philip Worley, who, after dropping off the back of Grigg-Galt and Webster, has been sitting in the 2:05s in terms of lap time and looking a little bit shaky through the S's. So Braden Nash, with his last lap being a 2:04.9, certainly on a charge himself and could definitely be on for 7th. Meanwhile, the talking car comes into the pits and Jack Flood takes over from Aaron Russell, and he'll be bringing that car to the end in the last 38 minutes. No more chance of a move there for Ethan Grigg-Galt. Just sitting behind Cooper Webster for now. Got some lap traffic coming up, so he could get an advantage through here. He's going to have to depend on Webster finding his way through this traffic reasonably, and as they get on the start-finish straight, one of them already allowing them past. There's Tyrone Anderson in the Mauler Esports machine. And Ian Ford has a bit of traffic as well, and the former Simon Chadwick, but looks like this is going to be sorted out before they get to Griffin's Bend. Ford pulls on out and has the inside for the corner. Pretty easy move done there, but he's got Chris Hughes and Sean McNamara up ahead of him. And it's from there quite some time to Andrew Carl, who's just making his way up to the top of the mountain now.
Andrew Carl was the fastest driver on the track last time through, 2 minutes 3.6. The lap time's really starting to come down once again now that the conditions are cooling. And Andrew Carl has got himself to just about within 5 seconds of the two race leaders. If anything, Brody Kostecki's lost some time this lap to Jackson Suzel and Harlow. I think he might have had a traffic affected lap over the top of the mountain. And in fact, it's now, the gap has elongated quite significantly. So not a good lap for Brody Kostecki. And Andrew Carl is now only a couple of seconds away. So that just releases a bit of pressure from Jackson Suzel and Harlow as the final pit stops approach.
Yes, but how soon will they approach is the question. We're going to find out for sure along with you guys watching. around Australia, New Zealand, around the world as well. There is the gap. And we'll compare lap times again. A 2:03.7 for Harlow. He's getting faster, but a 2:05.1 for Kostecki. Yeah, that lap was definitely affected by something. And looking at his car, he does have a bit of damage on his right front. I'm going to go back and see if that was an appointment with the wall at some point on this lap. Doesn't look like it was. So that's not been a problem for the last-minute racing car. I think just a bad lap.
Might have just, made a mistake somewhere that's cost him a bit of time to our race leader, Jackson Suslin Harlow. It's about 2 seconds that he's lost. So, costly there, but Brody Kostecki, he knows how to focus. He'll get his head back together, back into the game, and make sure that he recovers that lost time as quickly as he can. But with the lap times being so closely matched, it's hard for him to make even the slightest of mistakes. I really think it's going to come down to this last round of pit stops, isn't it? Who's done the best job of saving fuel? Who can have the shortest final pit stop? And Jack Flood, having got into the talking Lamborghini, has spun it at Hell Corner. That's a very weird spot that he's ended up parked there on the grass on the inside.
Wait till you see where he actually parked it. So it happened. Oh no, that was Braden Nash that he made contact with. Jack Flood just catching the grass there. So now that NSR car carrying some extra damage, but Flood just misjudged the line of his car. And have a look at this. Backwards, perches himself on the pit exit wall. Tony Hawk spec, according to our director. So fortunately, he's managed to get that thing off the wall, and he is going again, but still, that's not a very dignified way to go out.
It was a strange incident, wasn't it? Those sorts of incidents are the worst because you do all of the hard work to get yourself late into the race, into a reasonably good position, and then to have something go wrong like that, very, very frustrating. So hopefully for the talking team, they won't lose too much time or too many positions out of that one, and they'll be able to keep fighting all the way through to the finish.
Well, Flood hasn't lost out too much. It's only been 3 positions that they've lost, still maintaining 16th place, and the next car behind them is the Mach 1 Esports Gold car, which is a fair way behind them at the moment, just making their way up to McPhillamy Park, so they're not in much danger there. So Braden Nash got a whack from Jack Flood, and now right on the back of Philip Worley for position for 7th place. And coming up to Griffin's Bend with some lap traffic, Simon Chadwick lifts off and lets them go, and Nash to the inside tries the move on Philip Worley, but not enough room there to get the move done. This is going to be a tight fight between these two.
Yeah, Braden Nash has been a fair bit quicker than Philip Worley the last few laps, so he has caught up to that DPR Ferrari. Now it's just a case of working out where to pass him.
And curiously, Ethan Greg Gold, you can see just ahead of these guys, he's dropped off massively off the back of the number 83 of Cooper Webster. So that has put paid to that battle between the 83 and the 26, and Ethan Greg Gold will be looking in his mirrors and thinking, well, Braden Nash is on his way. Hearing that something's happened to the 99 car as well, looks like Dennis Gatterick has had an internet dropout. So that's such a shame for the 99.
Oh, that's a heartbreaker for that car, because it would have been very interesting to see where they would have emerged once all of the other pit stops had been completed. They took the risk of staying out under that last safety car period to get track position, and it was a gamble that may well have paid off and seen them emerge somewhere inside the top 5 once the rest of the field came in for their final pit stop. So that's that's devastating for that team.
Certainly is. Well, they're going to try and continue as best they can. Hopefully Gatterick can get back in there and bring the car home to a classified finish, but they're going to be falling down the order. It looks like another driver has taken over, John Merritt in the TM Racing Ferrari. They're back out in position 12, and unfortunately they've now gone a lap down on the leaders. So I don't think that car is going to be visiting the top 10 anytime soon. The battle between Worley and Nash, though, continues.
Indeed it does. So Braden Nash still hasn't been able to find a way past the DPR Ferrari. He's not going to be close enough to go down the inside of Griffin's Bend. Well, look at how much they've caught up to Ethan Briggolt. He's fallen, like you said, right off the back of Cooper Webster, and he's now in the clutches of both Worley and Nash. So Ethan Briggolt struggling for a bit of pace as we get into the last half hour of the 2021 Bathurst 12 hour.
Tiny bit of damage to the front left of Ethan Grigolt's Ferrari, and he's encountered a bit of traffic there as well. Mark Fee in the Riot Sim Racing black car. Oh, goodness me, Worley and Nash having to go wide through McPhillamy Park to get past him. That was quite awkward. That would have cost them a couple of tenths, but it looks like Ethan Griggolt, his main worry right now is Philip Worley, because have a look at how much he's starting to jet up to the back of him. Let's see what happens on Conrod.
I'm wondering if Ethan Brigolt's maybe had a brush with the wall or with a back marker and damaged that car, because its pace and its performance is not what it was a few laps ago.
Oh no, Cooper Webster's been given a penalty by race control for an incident on lap 310. I'm going to check back and see what exactly that was.
So in comes Cooper Webster out of position number 5 in a car that was sporting all sorts of damage. Obviously wasn't handling as precisely as what the drivers would have wanted. They battled on. Cooper Webster had fought back into the top 5, and now that all gets undone in the final half hour of the race with a pit lane drive-through penalty.
And you know what? I think the answer to this penalty is also going to provide an answer as to why Ethan Griggolt fell off the back of him. It happened at the elbow, Jay, if you can grab that replay. Webster going for the move on Chris Hughes down at Forest Elbow, turned him around, and Ethan Griggolt, this is on lap 310 for these guys, Ethan Griggolt got into it there. That's what happened. You saw Griggolt just caught up in that incident. So take it away, Lockie. This is what happened coming down the mountain, and Chris Hughes minding his own business in this single file part of the racetrack, but it looks like Webster just got a bit impatient.
So if you're going to go down the inside of Forest Elbow, you need to make it a clean and decisive move, and that really wasn't either of those two things. And unfortunately, Ethan Griggolt, once again, we saw it early in the race as well, nowhere to go on top of the mountain, and ends up crashing into another car.
Well, that's a big shame for those guys. Here's the view from Griggolt, and once he got turned around, poor Ethan had to work his way through there on the inside. Fortunately, all those cars were able to get going again. Otherwise, we might have seen another safety car situation, and who knows how we would have been able to work out the strategy on that. Braden Nash going for the move, meanwhile, on the DPR car down at the chase. Looks like it hasn't quite worked out for him. He's on the outside and now the inside for Murray's Corner for position 7. Worley lifts off, lets him have it.
Good fair racing between those two, but in the end it's Braden Nash who manages to get that position. In terms of our race leaders, the margin has come down. There's now less than 4 seconds separating the top 3 cars. Andrew Carl really has been the man on a mission and the man on the move in recent laps, because he's been punching out the fastest times of any of the top 3 drivers. He's now less than a second behind Brodie Kostecki in second position.
A 2:03.5 for Andrew Carl on the last lap. We've got a bit of info around Jack Flood's incident that we saw just before. Apparently he lost power to his wheel, and I mean, that's another one of the things that drivers have to grapple with, Lockie, in a race like this. You know, real life motorsport, you have any amount of things that can go wrong on the car. You might have a problem with the engine, plastic bag getting in the radiator, messing up the cooling, a piece of suspension might break. Well, for sim racers, that kind of drama is related to their equipment. Sometimes the wheel can just lose power, and that's what happened to Jack Flood.
How unfortunate is that? And seriously unlucky for the team as well, after all of their efforts today. Still, they've been able to continue on. The talking car is still in 16th position, so didn't lose too much out of that incident on pit straight earlier on.
Harlow making his way through on a lapped car just up ahead of these guys as a cloud comes over the circuit. It's going to drop the track temperature ever further. It's down to 32 degrees at the moment, and really has fallen in the last couple of hours, and that's part of the reason why you're seeing the lap times that you are at the moment.
It's one of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of shadows on the racetrack as well. Long laps of traffic. Good job by whoever was in that Ferrari, just sidestep both Kostecki and Andrew Carl and give them safe passage through at Griffin's Bend.
That was Jared Smith in the Crowpeck racing car. They're currently running down in 36th position, but still managing to keep going with a reasonably clean car as well. Have a look at this.
Sometime in the next 4 or 5 laps, I would expect our race leaders to have to come down pit lane because they'll be just about out of fuel range. They've done 25.5 laps so far on the current fuel load. And as we know, it's anywhere between 30 and 32 laps, the maximum distance that you can go on a tank of fuel in one of these GT3 cars.
Indeed, so we'll be keeping a close eye on our leader. Seems that Jackson is trying to eke out this fuel tank as much as he possibly can. He knows that he has the gap, and he'll have word that Kostecki is now coming under pressure from Carl. So it's just plain sailing at the moment for the United car. Just got the lapped traffic to contend with here. A fairly reasonable let by there from John Baldwin. Harlow continues, and Harlow in those 203. Oh, hello. Our first taker of our leaders. The third place car, the Altus Esports machine, is the first one to come into the pits. And I think tactical decision here by Andrew Carl. He might be hoping that Kostecki has a slightly longer stop and he'll be able to beat him on pit time.
That'll definitely be the plan. I think he was starting to maybe be held up a little bit by Brodie Kostecki. So what he's hoping is that get in, take on enough fuel to get to the end of the race, come back out of the pits, hopefully with enough clear track to set some rapid lap times, and that will be enough to undercut Kostecki when he comes in for his final pit stop.
That's a very short stop for Andrew Carl there. The pit stop time, 13.6 seconds. Remember that number, because that's the ballpark that the other teams up the top are going to be shooting for. So out of the pits just ahead of Braden Nash.
Yeah, the tricky thing here for Andrew Carl, though, is that he's come out in a bit of a battle group because he's ahead of Braden Nash, but he's also behind Ethan Grigolt. So he'll be seriously hoping that these other cars don't compromise his performance in any way, because if he was to get held up, that would completely ruin that tactical option of pitting a little bit earlier than his rivals. Now, the other thing is Brodie Kostecki, he will have seen that Andrew Carl's come into the pit, so does he stay on the track and do his own thing, or does he come in this time around to try and cover off the potential attack that's going to come from Andrew Carl?
He might know about Carl's situation in the middle of the battle group and that he'll be held up slightly. So maybe Kostecki is going to decide, I'm on a clear track. I don't have anyone behind me for now. I'm just going to keep going for the next few laps, try and eke out the gap, use the car as much as I possibly can. Harlow avoiding the pits, and Kostecki does as well. So no immediate response from the last-minute racing boys. Ian Ford, though, in third. We should expect him to come into the pits soon-ish. And Carl making his way past Ethan Griggolt there to get himself back up into fourth place.
Yeah, so that's important there. So he's by making that move fairly quickly, he's minimised the amount of time potentially lost as a result of getting caught up in traffic.
Uh-oh.
But tell you what, Ethan Grigolt's wanting to make a bit of a fight of this. They'll run side by side on the run down into Murray's corner. Grigolt down the inside. This is not what Andrew Carl needs. Almost contact between the two cars, but Carl is able to take position on the outside. The last thing that Andrew Carl needs is to be involved in a dice like this with other competitors. And what this has also done is it's allowed Braden Nash and Philip Worley to close in on Ethan Grigolt as well. So it's had the effect of basically compressing this battle pack.
And Worley says, so, Ethan, we meet again. We'll see if the battle continues between those three, but Carl crucially clear of this battle pack, and he's got clear track ahead of him until Sean McNamara about 5-6 seconds ahead of him. So he's got a good position right now to eke out those lap times once more, but Braden Nash right on the back of Ethan Grigolt now thanks to that incident. Checking back in, traffic for the leader, but it's not going to hurt him too much there down Conrod Straight. Still waiting for that final pit stop call from our leader.
Good job there from Jackson Suzlin Harlow to efficiently navigate his way past those two cars. When you start hitting the laps traffic, maybe that's when you start to think that it might be a good time to make a pit stop as well, because that's the other thing. If you stay out on the racetrack, you can get held up too if you catch up with lapped cars that are having their own battles. So the drivers and the teams will have to take that into consideration when they decide when to come down pit road for their final pit stops as well. And we can see that Andrew Carl has opened up a bit of breathing space on Ethan Grigolt, so no immediate pressure from behind for Andrew Carl now. He can focus on driving that car to its maximum capabilities and extending a margin over the cars behind, while also trying to reduce the margin to Brody Kostecki up ahead.
He would have been helped a little bit by Kostecki making his way past Daniel Birchnell into turn one. It looked like a bit of an awkward move down into Hell Corner for Brody Kostecki. So there might be a few extra tenths there for Ethan Grigolt and Braden Nash. Crucially, a few extra tenths for Andrew Carl as well. And he'll be hoping that when Kostecki eventually comes in, that's going to be enough to secure the Altus car second place in this race. Looking a bit further up, Ian Ford might start seeing a few issues. He's got some traffic across the top. Jared Smith, who we checked in with a little bit before. Across the top of the mountain, Ian Ford having a bit of trouble getting past. He's managed to move on the way into McPhillamy Park, but that's still some extra time that our third place man at the moment would not want to have lost.
Fairly lonely race for Ian Ford at the moment. He's about 23 seconds behind Brody Kostecki, but he's also 10 seconds ahead of Andrew Carl, so no immediate pressure from behind, but also not really much chance of catching up to the cars ahead before we get to the end of this race.
So, still avoiding the pits is Jackson Suzlin Harlow. Still avoiding the pits is Brody Kostecki. And I feel like they're starting to think that they're racing each other at the moment. Andrew Carl down in fourth. Have a look at the little gaggle of cars up ahead of him. He's pulled nearly 2 seconds on Ethan Grigolt already on this lap. So Carl on a massive charge going down the inside into the chase. Just getting past Will Jesberg in the Team Hyperdrive car there. And Sean McNamara is up ahead of him. I gotta say, Andrew Carl has wasted no time making his way through these packs as we see Braden Nash bring the NSR car into the pits. We'd expect him to stay in the car for this final stint, just 16 minutes to go when he exits the pit lane.
You're right, Andrew Carl hasn't wasted any time in making his way through the traffic. However, his last lap was a tenth slower than Brody Kostecki, so that's not what he needs if he wants to try and jump Kostecki when Kostecki comes in for his last pit stop.
Well, looking at the gaps, it's about 2 seconds, 2 and a bit seconds between Kostecki and Harlow, with Carl even further behind, just making his way out of the cutting. It's going to be very tight when you consider pit stop transit time for Brody Kostecki. Probably spend around about 14 seconds stopped, maybe a little bit less. I don't know if that's going to be enough. Let's see if Jackson Suzlin-Harlow decides to go for the pits with 15 minutes to go. He does indeed, sticks to the left-hand side and filters down into pit lane. Kostecki follows him.
So now it's a battle of the pit crews who can get this final pit stop out of the way the most efficiently. And here is Andrew Carl. So this is critical. He's coming down Conrod Straight now. Where do Harlow and Kostecki rejoin the racetrack relative to the Altus Esports car that we ride on board with at the moment? Here we go. Maximum pressure on the pit crews as Jackson Suzlin-Harlow dives in for the United Sim Sports team's last pit stop of the race. It'll be a quick splash and dash, get just enough fuel in to get you through to the end of the race, and then get the hell out of there and get back onto the racetrack.
Harlow is away, and so is Kostecki. It looks like Andrew Carl has not been able to fully get it done on those guys. He's still a fair margin behind. He's actually lost out quite a bit to Brody Kostecki there.
Yeah, so the early pit stop option hasn't worked for Andrew Carl, but it has worked for Brody Kostecki. He definitely gained time on Jackson Suzlin-Harlow during that pit stop. The margin before they came into the pits, it was about 2.5 seconds. It's now just 1.2 seconds from first back to second. Brody Kostecki gained 0.4 of a second on that in-lap. So Brody Kostecki is getting himself within striking range of Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. We've got 14 minutes to go, and it's going to be Harlow versus Kostecki for the win in the 2021 Bathurst 12 Hour.
What a fantastic
And look at the
run.
traffic.
Oh.
Look at the traffic for Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. He's catching them at the worst possible time, heading across the top of the mountain. Good job by one of the back markers to use the escape road there. But look at how much time Jackson Suzlin-Harlow's losing the Ferrari.
Oh,
Finally
no,
decides to get out of the way.
Oh, Kostecki got compromised there as well with John Baldwin. He was just sticking to the right-hand side, and Kostecki had to go wide on the entry into Forest Elbow. That might have given Andrew Carl a tiny bit of a look into this battle, but this is going to be a really intense final 10 minutes. Kostecki is now in the draft range of Jackson Suzlin-Harlow.
Yeah, even though he did get compromised slightly into Forest Elbow, that passage of play over the top of the mountain still works very much to the advantage of Brody Kostecki, because it was coming down, particularly down through the dipper where Jackson Suzlin-Harlow lost an enormous amount of time, and this is a pressure motor race now. It's going to be a flat-out sprint race to the finish in this final 12.5 minutes. Wow, Mount Panorama, it never fails to deliver, does it? Time and time again, be it in the real world or in the virtual world, it has a habit of throwing up these grandstand finishes for us to enjoy and savour, and we're going to have another one this afternoon.
The modem simulation replay there of Braden Nash having a bit of a close call in the S's. We want to give a big thanks to Modem Simulation for all the support they've shown us over the years, as that's Braden Nash spinning himself at Forest Elbow. That's a big shame for him. That's a couple of extra positions lost, but our replay deal with Modem Simulation ends after this broadcast, and we're going to be having a new replay sponsor come on board for our next casts. We want to give a huge thanks to Modem Simulation for all the support that they've shown us over the years. We love you guys. A big thanks.
So, race, less than 12 minutes to go. Two high-quality drivers fighting for victory. Who gets it done from here?
Good question. Very good question, because I think Kostecki and Harlow are very evenly matched at the moment in these cars. A little bit of extra traffic could stymie this run here for Harlow. It's Guy Leach in the Injectors Online Racing Ferrari. He's going to let them both by on Conrod Straight here. I think Kostecki has a bit of the advantage as the attacking driver. He's going to be able to put some pressure on Harlow to make a mistake, and of course he's still on the headlight flash button as usual. But Jackson knows what it's like to visit the top step of races. Back in the Aussie Car Turbo Touring Car Series, he dominated in that series. Didn't quite race against Brody Kostecki there, but this is a very worthy opponent for Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. I personally reckon that either one of them could take this. I'm struggling to really place one car solidly over the other, but they're closer than they've ever been coming through into turn one. The gap at the line just 0.559 of a second.
It's so much traffic that they're still having to encounter as well. It could be a case of this race being decided by where and when they catch up to the back markers, because that's the thing that seems to be causing the margin to ebb and flow between the two of them at the moment. Virtually inseparable in terms of lap times, both of them doing 2:03.9 lap times last time through, and we've got just 10 minutes to go. We've been racing for 11 hours and 50 minutes. And can you believe it? It comes down to this less than a second after so much racing. 322 laps we've completed, and we're still not at the end yet. We have absolutely smashed the real world distance record today, despite the fact that we've had no less than 17 safety car interruptions. And look at Brody Kostecki. He is throwing everything at it. He's within millimetres of the wall, heading through Reid Park and through Solomon Park, as he applies maximum pressure to Jackson Suzlin-Harlow across the top of the mountain.
Oh, and Harlow almost got into the wall at the dipper there. That's going to give a bit more of an advantage to Kostecki here, and the draft is going to come into play down Conrod. Nail the throttle and away you go, just using the wall there to keep the car on the circuit. Now let's see if the move is made. Kostecki doesn't want to get this done too early and offer Jackson a chance to get back at him, but the momentum starts. Is he going to go for the dive at the chase? He's a bit too far back to get it done, but Harlow goes defensive side by side into the braking zone. Kostecki comes around and they make contact. Kostecki shuffled off the circuit there with Jackson Suzlin-Harlow protecting the inside.
Wow, that was great stuff from Brody Kostecki, trying to go the long way round on Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. Light contact between the two cars, but it was enough to send Kostecki off the road. We'll go to the motor simulation replay. You could say that he had the momentum. He was closing in the drafts down Conrod Straight. Harlow knew about it, moved to the inside to defend his position. Kostecki was deep under brakes, and it was only the lightest of brushes between the two BMWs, but you would have to say racing incident play on, and Jackson Suzlin-Harlow and Brody Kostecki will both live to fight another day.
They will, but will Brody Kostecki live to fight for the win? He's going to have to make up that time to Jackson again. The gap between them is 1 and a bit seconds there, 1.3 to be precise. Is he going to be able to make that up in just 8 minutes around Mount Panorama? He's going to have to drive the wheels off that thing.
Yeah, and he needs to be careful not to get trapped into overdriving the car to try and compensate for the time that he lost with that off-track excursion. Don't think you can really penalise anyone for that one. Kostecki was obviously the driver trying to get the overtaking manoeuvre done, so the onus was on him to get it done fairly, and he wasn't able to. So I think we call that a racing incident, and we say play on. But that might have just been his best opportunity to get past Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. Not sure that he's quite going to get close enough to have that good an opportunity again, unless traffic comes into play, and we have seen that on a few occasions throughout this race.
We have indeed. The gap extends by a tenth coming down Conrod Straight. As now Braden Nash, who is on a recovery drive after having a spin at Forest Elbow, he's trying to chase down Cooper Webster for P6. And remember that Altus car suffering from a penalty just earlier. John Merritt as well. He's looking for an extra position here. The Injectors Online car of Guy Leach just up ahead with Andrew Carl, the third place man, in between them. Oh no, that's a problem for Jesse Butler. P16, car 2, and looks like that's pretty safe off the circuit.
So we estimate that we'll have 5 laps to go for our race leaders. We've got just over 6 minutes remaining on the clock at this stage. Here's a look at what happened to Jesse Butler. Got it all wrong at Hill Corner, off the road on the exit. That unsettled the car and caused him to rotate back across the track and into the wall on the inside.
And the front end of that car missing now. And depending on your opinion, maybe the look at the BMW M4 has been improved slightly with the front end being taken off. It's certainly a controversial front bumper on that machine.
Yeah, I know the grill in particular with the M4 has been somewhat polarising in terms of its opinion and how it's been received throughout the wider automotive community.
Something happened here to Philip Worley. We're going to take a look. And remember Braden Nash there just in the background. He's got the number 83 for company, and a lock-up coming into Hell Corner and off into the gravel trap. That is 2 spots lost there.
Yeah, it was in position 6 and has fallen back to 8th position. Braden Nash manages to get through. 1.3 seconds the margin between Jackson Suzel and Harlow and Brody Kostecki. It's pretty much stagnated between these 2 cars, but look at this, more laps traffic about to become a factor for Jackson Suzel and Harlow on the run down into Murray's Corner. He needs to hope that these back markers have seen him and get out of the way, because the last thing that he needs at the moment is to be impeded by laps traffic, and the problem is that they're engaged in their own battle, so they might not be totally aware they've got the race leading car right behind them, and you can see that Suzel and Harlow's exit from Hill Corner has been somewhat compromised by those back markers.
It has indeed, and it looks like they let him by without much fuss on Mountain Straight, but I don't think Brody Kostecki's going to get the same luxury. Jack Flood pulls over in the Talk Inc. car, and that's very awkward for Kostecki. He didn't quite know where he was going to go, but the gap stays relatively the same between those 2 cars, and they both get by the traffic before they get to the real crunch zone at the top of the mountain. The next car ahead in terms of traffic is Braden McKay, running in 38th position in the Real Bad Racing Lamborghini.
Yeah, if anything, that's probably just actually helps Jackson Suzel and Harlow a bit. He's opened up another couple of tenths per second on Brody Kostecki. I think that opportunity that we saw into the chase where the 2 cars ran side by side, that might just have been Brody Kostecki's one and only shot at winning this race for the last minute racing team, and he wasn't quite able to pull it off, but you can't blame him for throwing absolutely everything at it this afternoon. We've got just over 3 minutes left on the clock, so we believe this will be the 3rd and last lap of the race, so there'll be this one and 2 more to go after this one. That will take us up to a total of 327 laps that we will have completed, so we'll break the race distance record by some 13 laps compared to what was achieved in the real world on Mount Panorama last year.
Not a bad run indeed. And race control have ruled on the incident between Kostecki and Harlow. Racing incident play on, so they agree with us, Lockie.
Yep, good call, good decision.
Well, remains to be seen whether or not the gap's going to be made up in just 2 or 3 laps for these guys. Jackson Harlow, 2:04.0, still putting in those fantastic times. Brody Kostecki not able to match it, 2 tenths down, and another 2 tenths down on that lap time. Andrew Carl running in 3rd place. I think, barring any crazy incidents on the final lap, that is the top 3 pretty much decided. But Andrew Carl's still got quite a bit of lap traffic to negotiate if he wants to have one final lunge at trying to capture that 2nd place. Dean Grogan and Max Havett, who have been running with each other for a short while, they let him go on the run up to the cutting.
Just as we get into the closing stages of this race, what a magnificent performance it's been from the team at Oceanic Sim Racing and Aussie Mixed and Fixed to organise this Bathurst 12-hour event. absolutely sensational response, it has to be said. 51 entries and well over 160 drivers in total when you consider the fact that we had a number of 4 driver combinations competing in the race. So really, really good that everybody's got out to support this event, and it's given us something to do in the absence of the real-life Bathurst 12-hour this year. Jackson Suzlin Harlow, he's on the home stretch now. Penultimate lap of Mount Panorama. What a performance it's been from the Evolution Race, sorry, not the Evolution Racing team, the United Sim Sports team. They've done a magnificent job qualifying. Standout performance from Jackson Suzlin Harlow to land on pole position. And they had to overcome a few challenges during the race. They had to fight back from adversity on a couple of occasions, particularly early in the race, but they did it in style. And Jackson Suzlin Harlow and his teammates, they've had to soak up an enormous amount of pressure in the last 3 or 4 hours of this race. They've been at the front for most of it, but rarely have they had any sort of buffer back to the cars behind. And it's hard to believe that after 12 hours of racing, the margin from first to second is going to be less than 2 seconds. It has been an extraordinarily hotly contested affair with many, many high-quality drivers and teams putting on a sensational show for us today.
I'm in 100% agreement with you there, Lockie, and I have to say the drive from the United squad has been nothing short of masterful. Just a little bit more lap traffic there in the form of Mark Fee letting those guys go. And it seems that they're not going to come up on any more traffic because the next car up is Timothy Febben, who's just coming into the S's now. So Jackson Suzlin Harlow can push flat out to the end. A drive that I think will go down in history in the AusNZ Sim community. An incredibly fine performance from all 3 of those drivers, but we can't take anything away from the last-minute racing boys, the real-life racers, Cooper Murray, Cody Bircher, and Brody Kostecki. I mean, Kostecki almost had it there in that move at the chase just a few laps ago. But they're the kinds of drivers that will go hell for leather and give it a red-hot go whenever they possibly can. Home stretch then for United, for Jackson Suzlin Harlow.
Down at Conrod Straight for the last time. The race started in the darkness this morning. We've had incidents, we've had fantastic skirmishes, we've had 17 safety car interventions, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the United Sim Sports team that reigns supreme. They've had to work hard for it today, but this is going to be an exceptionally well-deserved victory for the 3 drivers that bring their BMW home in first position at the 2021 Smith & Sons Bathurst 12-hour goes to Jackson Suzlin Harlow, Jared Filsell, and Forzen El Nabi.
Incredible stuff. Brody Kostecki bringing the last-minute racing car home in second. Great stuff after starting in 5th. Andrew Carl makes it an Altus car on the podium. It's still not decided for 5th and 6th, though. Ethan Gridgold and Cooper Webster having one last battle here, pushing each other massively down Conrod Straight. Webster's going to have the inside for the chase, the braking zone. He moves just ahead of Ethan Gridgold as they get to the turn-in point, and that is move completed there. Up into 5th. A great recovery there for the Astra Gaming Altus Esports number 83 machine. Ian Ford, though, for ERT, brings his Ferrari across the line in 4th, and it's going to be 6th place for the sister ERT Ferrari. What a great result for those guys.
A great recovery from Cooper Webster after the drive-through in that final stint to get back up into the top 5 as well. Pretty much making up all of the spots that he lost with that penalty. Simrings.com DPR, great result for them with 2 cars in the top 10. They'll be stoked with that result. They're an honest, hard-working team that punch away in sim racing, not just in this race, but in the V8 Scops category as well. They'll be stoked to have got both of their cars home in the top 10. And BMW Team Schnitzel, they've had an up and down day today. Ran as low as 45th, ran as high as 1st. In the end, they are going to come home, though, for the final position inside the top 10.
A big congratulations to those guys as well. They managed to keep the car clean for the majority of that. John Derrick will be celebrating with his teammates Hans. The Directors Online squad of Guy Leach, Paul Mansell, and Maverick Benson coming home in 11th place after starting from 26th. That is a great run from those guys. They're followed up by one of the heartbreak stories, the TM Racing entry of Luke Turner, John Merritt, Dennis Gatterick, and Glenn Rodell. Those guys were in contention for a top 10, but Gatterick's internet dramas towards the end put paid to that. Good job from John Merritt to take it home from there. 9.5 Sim Sport comes home 2 laps down. Chadwick, Crossingham, and Campbell, with XRC coming home in 14th place. Chris Hughes and Nicholson putting in a consistent drive there. Mac 1 Esports White with Dave Clements, Lee Vandenberg, and Timothy Febben. We saw them having a couple of problems towards the end, but they still come home in the top 15. Talk Inc. will be hoping for something more from that. Unfortunately, those incidents for Aaron Russell and Jack Flood towards the end, putting paid to a potential top 15 finish for those guys, but still a great run. Mac 1 Esports Gold and 9.5 Sim Sports 17th and 18th. Those guys coming home 3 laps down. And then the top 20 rounded out by the AutoServe Racing entry, sponsored by Movember, Tim Crowley, Michael Brennan, and Max Habit coming home in 19th. And then it was Norris, Morris, Houston, and Coey Jordan coming home in 20th place.
Over the page, we go to the Team Hyperdrive 219 car that finished in 21st position, the TGS Racing entry in 22nd, LL Racing in 23rd, back to HR Endurance in position number 24, TGS Callum Murray Racing in 25th position, back then to IPA Racing, Riot Sim Racing, the DT Racing team, third of the TGS RCI, GT3 team, Racing Machines next, and then the Banter Alliance completing at the top 30. They were some 26 laps behind our race winners.
And we're getting into retirement territory now because the XCM entry of Jason Bentz, Phil Letchford, and Murray Walpole could not make it to the end. The TD Sport entry did not have much luck either. We saw Tommy Staunter-Chun having a couple of incidents out there on the track in the last couple of hours. JTJ, Crow Peck, Mauler, Fishy coming home, or not coming home, unfortunately. They're quite some way down. The Gentlemen's Sim Racing Club 203, 49 laps down, classified 37th. The Real Bad Racing entry was able to make it home on the racetrack, but 53 laps down. It's not a great run for those guys, but still managing to get inside the top 40, as with Fishy Motorsport and Fusion Sim Racing, who qualified in 10th place yesterday, but unfortunately, incidents put paid to their charge through the field.
It was a big fail for the Bathurst 12-hour. The Trick Esports car was a retirement. Unfortunately, Ross Rizzo, James Glasspool, and Alexander Bird crashing out of the race with a tangle with the backmark while they were running in a very good position. Drop Bear Motorsport, another non-finisher, after showing some promise early in the day. Angry Birds Racing, XCM, TGS RCI, the number 204 car, and a shocker for the Synergy Sim Racing team. The number 88 car was actually the last of the 3 cars to retire from the race. Gentlemen's Sim Racing Club, they were in the thick of the action today. R1 Sim Sports were retirements as well. The number 14 at Synergy Sim Racing car was out fairly early on in the day, as was the number 203 Zuva Racing Machine.
Indeed. And coming up to the end of the results, Synergy Sim Racing number 40, the first car out, unfortunately, right at the very start. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to start with third place as our director's requesting, because the drivers are not here. So the first drivers that we'll end up interviewing are the Last Minute Racing boys. Brody Kostecki, Cody Bircher, and Cooper Murray join us in the commentary box now. Welcome, guys, and congratulations on second. We'll go to Brody first, just to ask about the very end of the race. Brody, you gave it a red-hot go there versus Jackson, Suzlin, Harlow. Tried around the outside at the chase, but it was a very hard-fought victory for them.
Yeah, Jackson drove really well all race, and just a little bit in that code there, just managed to push me off a bit, but yeah, finally managed to find some pace at the end there, and just got to thank all the boys on last minute. Cody and Cooper, it was sort of as it's named, pretty last minute, and got to thank Jackson's mums too for all the sandwiches. throughout the day.
Oh dear, of course. We'll go to Cooper next. Cooper, you were charged with the start of the race and certainly managed to keep the car going, but must have been very tough there starting in the dark.
Yeah, it was a bit different. Never raced in the dark on iRacing before, especially that dark with no lights. But yeah, we kept it clean. Bush did a mega job those last 2 stints. That was a really good drive, and well done to Jackson, Jared for the win, and Forzan. It was a really good race.
Certainly was, and quite the opening for you, doing 2 stints and then coming back in for another 2 stints towards the end. Did you guys come into this with, I know you guys are called last minute racing for a reason, but did you have a plan for the driver fair share amount, an idea of who was going to drive when?
There was no idea of me doing the start, and then from then on we just sort of winged it. But yeah, it worked out well.
Cody?
It evidently did.
Yeah, Cody, Lockie Mansell here, mate. Congratulations on a sensational result. During your stints there, you seem to be very much in the thick of the action right throughout. Talk us through how it panned out from your perspective today.
Yeah, it was pretty hectic. I mean, obviously a couple of those issues were 100% my fault. There's nothing. I'm not going to hide that. But overall, I can't thank Cooper and Brody enough for the race. They did a mega job the whole time. I sort of had a dodgy middle stint. I didn't look after the tyres as well as I should have. But overall, they pulled us through really well. And obviously, it's a bit disappointing at the end, but we came really close, and we can say we gave it everything in the race.
Just a general question for the 3 of you guys as well. Obviously, all 3 of you have had a lot of experience and a lot of success in real life. National level motorsport. Brody, you're a race winner in Super 2. Cody, you're a race winner in National Formula Ford. And Cooper, you're a race winner in Carrera Cup. How much does the sim racing stuff help you guys with your real life racing exploits?
I think probably the only reason why I actually did this race is just to, get my eye in for the first round coming up. So, and also a bit of fun as well at the same time. So it was good to just jump in, and we actually didn't do too much practice. So it was kind of just fun, just hopping in and just having a crack, and it sort of paid out pretty well.
Yeah, it is good to get your eye in, especially racing with battles and the pressure and stuff. But this race is more about having fun, as Brody said, and we certainly did that.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more with them, to be fair. It's really a lot of it's just getting your eye in initially, and even just being out of the seat for so long, it's sort of, you can jump on, do some laps, and it sort of all correlates in some way or another. So it's always a ball of fun, especially when you can do stuff like this with a group of mates, and also learn a lot while you're going.
Indeed. Well, guys, second place, second step on the podium from 5th place. It's certainly a profitable result to Brody for this one. Is there anything that you'd like to say? Anyone that you'd like to thank from your garage there at Last Minute Racing?
No, just Cody and Cooper for saying yes to do it. It was sort of pretty last minute, and just also Jackson, Jared, and Forzan. We sort of worked with them a little bit on setup and stuff as well. So it was great to finish 1-2 with them as well, and just Jackson's mum for supplying all the catering.
And Nathan Kaiser for supporting us all day.
Oh yes, so sorry. Yes, and Father Nathan.
Big shout out to Nathan there. Those are your second place guys: Cooper Murray, Cody Bircher, and Brody Kostecki. And the next interview, unfortunately, we don't seem to have the Altus 43 in the booth ready. So, Lockie, to you with the winners.
Yeah, so big congratulations to our winners today. What a performance it was from Jackson, Susan Harlow, Jared Filsell, and Forzan El Navi. We've got Forzan and Jared both in the commentary box. And both of you drivers excelled at various times during the day. But we'll go to you first, Jared, because you got tangled up in a bit of an incident down in the chase early on in the day, but you seem to have pretty good pace to be able to fight back from adversity, and that was something that we saw throughout the day.
Yeah, that was a big off, wasn't it? Took me a while to get the car going again. Actually stalled it, so I had to bring the car to a standstill. I don't think I've gone off there that fast ever, not intentionally anyway. That was a big one, but props to the guys. We stuck to our guns. The setup was very good, so we'll thank Last Minute Racing for their technical nous and the little contribution they made when we were tuning the setups. So you could definitely tell those two cars were a leap above all the other ones today, so that was great. But yeah, I think we tried to keep our nose clean as best we could. We didn't use a fast repair till the last stint, so that was a bonus.
Give us a bit of a sense, Forzan, I'll go to you. We saw that obviously the track conditions at the start of the race this morning were quite cool, but in the middle part of the day, the track temperatures and the ambient temperatures became quite warm and the lap times dropped off. But you guys seem to have a car that works pretty well regardless of what the conditions were. So give us a bit of a sense of how you had to tune up the car over the course of the day, or maybe adapt your driving techniques to suit the changing grip levels.
Yeah, the setup was actually quite well along most track temps. So during the afternoon track temp, it was just more about really controlling more with your right foot. But like I said, Jackson and Jared and myself, we tuned the setup pretty well to be adaptable within different conditions. And yeah, like you said, the pace was actually really good between the three of us. So it didn't really affect what kind of temp we were in. We were just able to punch out good lap throughout the race, which is pretty good considering myself and Jared, we just bought the car on Wednesday, so it was a bit of a last minute thing. And yeah, for us to just adapt quickly with the car setup and a new car is just, it's pretty cool to get a win at the end of it all. Cool.
And we do have Jackson, Susan and Harlow in at the commentary box as well. Jackson, you were in the lead for a lot of the time that you were in the car, but it seems like pretty much the entire length of your stints, you were under pressure from behind. Talk us through the battle with Brody Kostecki in the last stint.
You guys can hear me right? Just need to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. It was a really cool battle. Obviously, I started the race, was just trying to pick a battle until the last hour. I made a mistake with a back marker over the top, which was completely on me, got us the drive-through. But in that last stint, if I didn't have Forzan, Jared and Cam, I probably would have fenced the car because, the back markers are probably, they were getting on my nerves a bit. But, it was an awesome battle with Brody, obviously. Everyone knows how good he is. So when he was behind me, it was putting a fair bit of pressure on me. But, I just kept my head down, didn't make mistakes. So I knew we could hold on.
And so to the three of you, people in the background, I'm sure you'd like to thank. Who gets it done for you?
I'll give a big thank you to Harrop, Valvoline, Too Easy Finance, Western Mazda, Paramount Isuzu Ute, and everyone at United Sim Sports. Also, big shout out to Cameron Vicott for helping us engineer the car throughout the day. He was
and Brad Newman.
Yeah, and Bradley Newman as well. Big thanks to him. Just big thanks to Jamie and everyone for setting this up. It's a great race to be a part of, and just really happy for all the boys that we could get a win at the end of it.
I'll just thank OSR as well for their contribution to the community and hosting this great event, given that the official Bathurst 12-hour is not so greatly scheduled for us, so it was cool to be a part of. So thanks Simon, Mike, all the Henry and all the crew in the background.
Yeah, that's the same for me. Big thanks to all them guys. It was an awesome event and really fun to do when everyone's free.
Well done, guys, and we've got some very cool prizes coming your way as well, courtesy of Logitech G. You've got some headsets and also some cash coming your way, so congratulations to the three of you on a sensational race victory. We'll move on to our third place team. We'll get them up onto the podium. And for Altus Esports, it was Andrew Carl, James Scott, and Simone Maria Marcheno. Congratulations. We've got Andrew and James both in the commentary box. And it was an up and down day for you guys, but you found yourselves in a pretty good position at the end.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of a tough race. The United guys were very quick all the time during the race. So it was just about just keeping close to them, and unfortunately, couldn't make anything stick when we had the opportunity. But congrats to them.
Talk us through that last stint, because we saw that there were a few different, in fact, the last few stints, there were a few differing tyre strategies playing out, and it actually seems for a while there that you had a bit of a chance of maybe catching up to the front runners. Did you think that you could have got to them if it hadn't been for a couple of little incidents?
So what we did in the last stint was basically just put new tyres on for the last run and split our fuel, so we underfueled a little bit for the first time on new tyres and run like a really small stint at the end. Whereas the United guys did a little bit different, and initially it looked quite good, but then they seemed to find a little bit of pace as the fuel load burned down for them, so we weren't really able to make any more gains for them on them.
I'll throw over to Race. Race, do you have a question for Andrew and James?
I do indeed. I would have liked to ask Simone this question if he was here, but I think you guys might be able to give a bit more insight. The way the traffic was throughout the day, we noticed that particularly during Simone's last stint, there were a couple of occasions where there were some close calls with a couple of lapped cars. How was the traffic to navigate throughout the day for you two?
James, do you want to take it?
Yeah, the traffic was a bit how you going, especially if you caught someone across the top of the mountain there. But on the whole, probably wasn't all that bad. There wasn't too many really dangerous moments. It was more just a lot of time lost. But I know Simone had a few close calls in his stints. But luckily, I didn't have too many.
Well, that's very fortunate for you guys, but it's still a third place and a good haul. It's $50 in cash prize money for all three of you, plus an Astro A20 gaming headset. So it's quite the result, quite the haul for you guys, Andrew.
Yeah, that's kind of ironic because yesterday my mic actually broke. So in qualifying, I had to basically go around and I couldn't talk to my team, so I think that's kind of fitting that we got the prize from that. So
yes, indeed. Well, before we let you guys go, who would you like to thank? Who gets it done for you at Altus Esports?
So firstly, we'd like to just thank the organisers for putting on the race. It was quite an enjoyable event, so I hope they do it next year. So with our sponsors, we'd like to thank Logitech G, Astro Gaming, and O3D as well. Is there anyone else, James?
Race Tech seats as well. They always give us some N-Cube controls. But also I'd like to thank the teammates as well, with Andrew and Simone doing an awesome job all the way throughout the race. So yeah, couldn't fault them enough.
Well, Altus Esports there with a well-deserved podium at the very end of this intense 12-hour race, Lockie. I think that brings to an end proceedings for the day, and what a day.
Yeah, big day. It's always a big mentally draining day, the Bathurst 12-hour, regardless of whether you're a driver, a team manager, TV producer or commentator. But very, very well done to everybody involved in the organisation of the event. A really, really impressive performance from everybody involved. Some fantastic on-track racing, really entertaining, and once again, the Bathurst Endurance Race delivers a fantastic finish for us.
It certainly does, and we want to give a big thanks to everyone who's tuned in and watched throughout the day. It's been a pleasure to bring you this here on SimSpeed TV. Want to give one final thank to Motum Simulation for their support on the replays. And we're going to say goodbye to them for now on our broadcasts. Thank you so much for the service over the years, guys. Thank you to OSR and to AMF for putting this whole thing on in the first place. And you see the LGC Images logo down there at the bottom. You'll be able to check them out for images of this race in the coming days. Smith & Sons Renovations and Extensions coming on board as the title sponsors of this event. A huge thanks to you guys as well, showing your support there for the Australian sim racing community. So the 12-hour, unfortunately not in real life this year, but the sim world put on a fantastic show either way. Lockie Mansell was with you, along with myself, Reese Gardiner, and Jay Kennedy was behind the scenes making everything happen, controlling the whole shebang. From all of us here at SimSpeed TV, we say goodbye for now, but we'll wait and see what happens next year in terms of a Bathurst 12-hour.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now. He's got traction. He's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney. Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up the wall. Oh my God. Oh, big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are going to want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh no.
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?